Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
वातावरण निर्माण
What happened when there is imbalance? So imbalance leads to starvation. Okay, what is starvation? Starvation means there is a starvation of the food. जर ही इम्बॅलन्स वाढत राहिलं म्हणजे लोकसंख्या वाढते आणि अन्न पदार्थ मात्र तेवढ्या वेगाने वाढत नाही, त्याच्यामुळे काय होणार, खाणारे व्यक्ती जास्त.
Ajay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. I can hear you.
Okay.
good morning.
वैसे ही रेडियो 1 के बारे में भी सारे अपडेट्स पाते रहने के लिए हमें भी ऑनलाइन फॉलो करना है। फेसबुक पर फॉलो करने के लिए सर्च कीजिए 94.3 रेडियो 1 कोलकाता, फॉलो कर डालिए।
तो ऐसे आता है कि
तो म्यूट का मतलब क्या होता है मालूम? साइलेंट।
हाँ साइलेंट।
तो साइलेंट की आवाज कैसे आएगी?
हाँ नहीं अनम्यूट किया है आपने, अभी म्यूट है ये, अभी अनम्यूट है।
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Dr. Kaul. How are you? Can you see me?
Hello, good morning.
Good morning to you.
सादर प्रणाम सर, BW पांडे बोल रहा हूँ। प्रणाम सर, चरण स्पर्श।
नमस्कार, कहिए कैसे हैं?
आशीर्वाद है सर, अच्छे हैं, बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है आपको देख करके। सर आपको देख सर अच्छे लगे। कौल साहब नमस्कार सर।
नमस्कार नमस्कार।
हाँ,
दीक्षित सर नमस्कार.
नमस्ते नमस्ते. कहीं कैसे हैं?
चांगले सर, तुमचे आशीर्वाद आहेत.
नमस्कार.
अच्छा माइक
माइक लगाओ आपको लिए.
नहीं, वो सुनाई देता होगा
हाँ,
उनकी
उनको
आवाज.
सुनाई.
सुनाई.
जरा सीक्वेंस निकालना किसका कैसे है. पहले कैसे.
गुड मॉर्निंग दीक्षित सर, नगराले बोल रहा हूँ.
नगराले सर नमस्कार.
नमस्ते पांडे जी, नमस्ते नमस्ते.
Good morning, Professor Dikshit and Professor Kaul and all the colleagues.
Good morning, Professor Pardeshi.
Good morning.
Sir, good morning.
Good morning.
Madras State.
Good morning, sir. Good morning.
morning, Professor Jagannathan, Professor Jagannathan, Professor
Good
Pardeshi.
morning, sir.
Yes.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. I'm Slochna here, sir. Professor Dikshit sir and Professor Kaul sir and everyone. Very good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning and namaskar, sir. Professor Seema Jalan. Good morning to everyone. Dikshit sir, Kaul sir. Yes, so nice to see you after so long. Sulochna ji.
Namaste.
Ji, namaskar.
Yeah.
My heartiest regards to everyone.
Same here, ma'am. All of you.
Good morning to everyone. I am Dr. Arvind Moulimani, Professor of Geography of Karnataka University, Dharwad, Karnataka State. I heartily be with you all in this floor of this webinar.
Good morning, all of you. I am Kumar Swami from Tiruchirappalli.
Namaskar, Professor Kumar Swami.
Yeah, good morning to all of you, including Professor Dikshit ji. Jai Bhai ji.
Good morning, all of you. I'm Professor Sachin Devare from Pune. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Devare Sahab.
Yeah, good morning, sir. Very good morning.
Jai Bhai, sir.
Very good morning. Namaskar. Suprabhat to everyone.
Namaskar,
From
sir. Namaskar.
Chandigarh, Professor Krishna
Good
Mohan, sir.
morning.
So, good morning, all of you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Krishna Mohan, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning to everyone.
Good
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. I am Anuradha from Jammu.
Very good morning, Anuradha.
Thank you.
Jai Bhai, sir. Shall I start?
1 minute थांबूया. Just 1 minute.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Jai Bhai.
Good morning, madam. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
So there are so many known
Sir,
faces.
Umrani sir has joined.
Good morning, Professor Dikshit sir.
Okay, then we'll start.
Here from Guwahati.
Okay. So, warm morning to all of you, honorable dignitaries, learned delegates, respected teachers, my colleagues and students. A very good morning to all of you. I, Dr. Himlata Patel, feel privileged to welcome you all on behalf of the organizing committee for the inaugural function of this 3 days National Conference on Environment, Development and Livelihood, Sustaining Earth and People, jointly organized by Department of Geography, Savitribai Phule Pune University in association with the Institute of Indian Geographers. Well, Albert Einstein said, if we knew what we were doing, it would not be called an research, would it? It is on these occasions like this, we get opportunities to test our knowledge and understanding. We look forward to get an exposure about what the best of the brains think about this very dynamic issue of environment, development, and livelihood. I welcome you all. Now, I would now start with the welcome address and a short brief about this conference. For this, I would like to invite the convener of this national conference and also the head of geography department, Savitribai Phule Pune University, Dr. Ravindra Jaibai, to present a brief account about this national conference. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Good morning, all of you. So today's guest of honor, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Nitin Karmarkar, sir. Soon he will join. Presently he is out of session, but from there he will join by around 11 o'clock. Today's guest of honor, Pro Vice Chancellor, Dr. N.S. Umrani, sir. Patron of the IIG, respected Professor K.R. Dikshit, sir. IIG President, Professor M.N. Kaur. Chair of the plenary sessions. Today's all the respected speakers. Some of the very eminent geographers like RBC, K. Kumaraswamy, and some of the very eminent geographers of the country. Colleagues from my department, governing council member of the IIG, invited dignitaries and participants. On the behalf of the Department of Phule Pune University and the Institute of Indian Geographers, I would like to extend my warm welcome to all of you for this National Web Conference on Environment, Development and Livelihood, Sustaining Earth and People on this online platform. Actually, this conference was planned during either October or November 2020 as a regular annual meet of the IIG. But due to outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, the national conference was postponed, and we thought that we could conduct it in February 2021. Then we were waiting for the normal situation, but continuing the completion or complete or partial lockdown situation, specifically in Pune and all over the country, and severity of the second wave, it has been decided to have an online conference instead of physical presentation, which was proposed in Pune. There are about 300 participants registered for this conference from all over the country, but majority are not much aware about the organization, those who are the organizations organizing this program. Initially, I will brief about the institutions associated with this national conference. The Department of Geography, Savitribai Phule Pune University, established in 1950 and has completed 71 years as a postgraduate center offering courses leading to MA, MSc Geography. It's perhaps the only department, maybe the only department, because we are not aware about any other department, which offer under one roof all the major specializations in human and physical geography that are geomorphology, climatology, settlement, population geography, and economic geography. And also offer fundamental and applied aspect courses of sub-branches of the subject, along with advanced techniques of remote sensing, GIS, advanced surveying, computer programming, basic and advanced statistics. Apart from this, we have two professional courses from almost 2 decades we are running in the department. The first is the MSc Geoinformatics. This is the 2 years master degree course. And another one is the postgraduate diploma in remote sensing and GIS. It's a 1-year course. From this year, 3 short-term courses are introduced with perspective of skill enhancement and employability point of view. Because we realize people don't have time to be spare 1 year or 2 years after their master degree or some doing the research. So these short-term courses we introduce in the department. These are certificate course in GIS and remote sensing for 3 months, the certificate course in advanced survey, tourism management and administration. This is the 6-month course. Last year, Center for South Asian Studies established in the department with support of the university authorities. The center is proposed to strengthen teaching program, collaborative research work, and resource publication by creation of scholarly monograph and theme-based regional studies to help policy initiatives. And also proposed 1-year course under the center. The organization, institute, which is associated with this organizing this conference, the IIG. The Institute of IIG, Indian Institute of Geographers, what we call as the IIG, Pune, it was founded in 1970 at the initiative of Professor K.R. Dikshit, the then professor and head of the Department of Geography, formerly University of Pune. The Department of Geography, Savitribai Phule Pune University, is its registered headquarters. The main purpose is to promote, the main purpose of this institute is to promote geographical knowledge by research, teaching, and such of the activities as directly or indirectly lead to the growth of geography. The institute proudly counts more than 1,000 life members and institutional members, annual members, and hundreds of regular subscribers of these transactions. Since its foundation, the institute has been regularly publishing the biannual journal, The Transaction of the Institute of Indian Geographers. It is listed in the UGC care list since the beginning and indexed in Scopus also. The institute regularly organizing annual geographer meets at university centers in different parts of the country. The program like Young Geographer Competition, or we call as Young Geographer Award, A.B. Mukherjee Memorial Lecture, and thematic plenary lectures or discussions are major feature of the annual meet. Now I will say something about the theme of this conference. The environment, development, livelihood, the sustaining earth and people. This is the theme we have decided. We had a discussion in the department also, and we discussed with some of the geographers. An idea came that we should look into this aspect. Mainly, whatever we have experienced after if you take the independence, if you take the Indian context, almost 70 years of this history, what happened to the development, environment, and livelihood. And similarly, whatever the experience we got after this outbreak of the pandemic situation. So the world population is expected, and it is estimated that it will reach by 8.6 billion by 2030. And developing world will be the major contributor. Another thing is that the middle class population or affluent class, mainly in developing countries, are also increasing. And it will lead to the increase in demand and production and consumption of natural resources through expansion and intensification of agriculture, uncontrolled growth of urbanization and industrialization. The forces of globalization, neoliberal policies may intensify these forces. So ultimately, there are major concerns: environmental degradation, inequality among the various groups or regions, and livelihood of mainly vulnerable communities. And if you look at the recent report about the SDG in India, in Indian case, it reflects the performance of the diversity of the performance in the various states in India. So major concern is environmental degradation. So declining biodiversity. One of the recent report is estimated that globally 7% of intact forests have been lost since 2000. Millions of species might be lost forever. Climate change, what we are predicting, it will have a disastrous consequences, and there will be many issues related to the climate justice. So the environmental effects are like degradation and declining per capita agriculture land, the forest resources, declining water resources, the polluting the air and water, and the constraint about the energy resources. So this will be a major environmental problems, what we have been realized over the period. The another aspect is the livelihood. It means making of living. It encompasses people's capabilities, assets, income, and activities required to secure the necessities of life. And what are these necessities? Basically, education, food, income, primary health center, reproductive health, sanitation, water, and equality among the societies. So these are the things, but there are major issues about it. So about all these basic necessities, what we talk about the livelihood, the major issues about its availability, its accessibility, its quality, and its status. And I think this is also one of the major concern about we have to think during due course of the time, whenever you think about the development near future. So many of the risks influenced by this environment and other issues are mainly affected to the vulnerable class. Okay, so these are the class such as women, indigenous people, refugee, displaced communities, slum dwellers, migrants, marginal farmers, landless laborers, and people belong to an unorganized sector during the crisis situation. Mainly they get severely affected, like during the drought, floods, and whatever we experience in this COVID-19 pandemic. So third aspects about the development. The biggest challenge mainly for the developing nations to seek faster economic growth, to provide livelihood and employment, because we have seen the unequal distribution of the resources. And the main purpose is to be what we have proposed, that elimination of the poverty, hunger, establishing the equality, reduce the unemployability, and social justice in society. And that should be happen without impacting the environment. So this is the major task we have. So therefore, immediate priority is to its population, besides creating sustainable economic opportunity at various levels, to keep its promises to take GDP growth of the country. So there is a dilemma of either development or environment. Because when we look at the ensuring inclusive and holistic development, we have to be focused on conservation and protection of natural resources. And it requires to redefine development and human progress by using the alternative paradigms to achieve the sustainable desirable change in context of nowadays we are talking about the self-reliant India and global and national targets of sustainable development goals. So I think these are the some of the issues that to the point. I think okay, these are the people are aware about it. The major concern about that when we talk about the development model in Indian context by taking care of the livelihood and environment, what we are talking. So we have some experience in Maharashtra. We have some villages, they have done so wonderful work. And they proved in all the times, during the normal course also and during the crisis also. Sustainably, they are taking the care of the what we are talking about as the goals of the sustainable development. For example, the villages which are very known all over the India, like Radegan, Shindi, and Purevza. So these are also there are some villages. They proved that. So I think while dealing with development, we should have a model for the sustainability, what we are talking about the development. So for the rural development and urban for the urban development. So whenever we talk about the sustainability, this is a contradiction in there because sustainability something more talk about the continuity by maintaining the quality of the continuity. And when you think about the development, so there is always the issue of the sustainability. So people believe that this definition itself is very contradictory, but there are some other contradictions also. So that need to be looked at. So another aspects about the concluding to my speech about this, about the theme, because geographers, I believe that geographer can play a very crucial role while designing. They have been doing, but whenever if you look at this background of this COVID-19 pandemic, I think they have whatever our strength we have, like integrative approach and synthesis approach. I think we could able to understand the dynamics of the nature as well as human society. Look into its integrative way also and find out the inclusive, sustainable and resilient development at varied geographical scale. So therefore, taking into consideration of dilemma of development, environment and livelihood, perhaps it shall be a apt time to identify challenges and prospects to achieve development with sustaining earth and people for harmonious present future. So before concluding speech, I think if you look at our tradition and our approaches, so I will give lastly, I will quote the here Mahatma Gandhi because he has given a statement about that, and that is the truly answer for it. He said about that the earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, but not the every man's needs. I think if you understand this approach, I think the issue what we are thinking, it will help us to find out a proper solution for the better future. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your welcome address and brief introduction of the theme of this national conference. Moving ahead, today, I am profusely elated to take an opportunity to introduce our guest of honor of the day, Professor M.N. Kaul, President of Institute of Indian Geographers. He is presently associated with the Department of Geography, University of Jammu as a consultant in DST-sponsored project on Kargil and Jaskar. He has served as former professor and head of the Department of Geography, University of Jammu. He has carried out extensive research in northwestern Himalayan glaciers and its application on environmental problems and agriculture. His research interests include glacier dynamics, quaternary glaciology, glacial and fluvial geomorphology, and geoecological landscape evolution and geohazards. I thereby invite Professor M.N. Kaul to address the gathering. Over to you, Kaul, sir.
Thank you. It is a great honor and privilege for me to warmly welcome Chief Guest Professor N.R. Karmalkar, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Savitribai Phule, Pune University, Pune, Professor N.S. Umrani, Pro Vice Chancellor, SPPU, respected Professor K.R. Dixit, Patron, IIG, and honorable guest of the session, Professor Ravindra Jayabai, Head Department of Geography, SPPU, and convener of the meet, Professor Sudhakar Pardesi, and Professor Amit Dorde, co-conveners, and Dr. Avinash Kandekar, Dr. Hemlata Patel as coordinator of the seminar. I would like to express my special thanks to organizing committee members, particularly Professor Veena Joshi, Professor Savnil Vyas, Dr. Ravinder Medha, and others for organizing the national event through online platforms. As a president of IIG, I warmly welcome all the participants and honorable members of the Governing Council of IIG. Further, I also welcome the chairperson of plenary session, particularly esteemed Professor Gopal Krishan, Professor Emeritus, Professor R.B. Singh, Delhi University, Professor H.S. Sharma, Jaipur University, Professor H.N. Mishra, Allahabad University, Professor Suryakant, Punjab University, Chandigarh, and Professor Kumaraswamy. The focal theme of the national webinar is environment, development, and livelihood. Sustaining Earth and People, jointly organized by Department of Geography, Savitribai Phule University, and Institute of Indian Geographers. I take this opportunity to congratulate the organizers for selecting the theme environment, development, and livelihoods, as it is not only relevant and contextual, it is identifying the core of geography as the relationship between the physical environment as a control and a human behavior as a resource. Geography can contribute in natural resource management by studying the differentiation as an emerging form interaction between the natural environment, one or more social systems in relation to sustainable development of the earth. Earth is the sole source of sustenance of a man, supporting the plant and animal. It provides the food, fiber, and shelter. The growing pressure and population, coupled with increasing variety of demand made on the land resources, have brought extra pressure on limited resources all over the country. Being stressed beyond its resilience limit, and many of its components show symptoms of its irreversible changes. The Green Revolution has transformed India into a food grain surplus country from a deficit one. Through initiation of the Green Revolution from Punjab Plain in 1960, and gradually this activity was adopted all over the country. No other activity has such an impact on socio-economic development of people, but lost its sheen in less than 5 decades. The reason economic benefit that accrued not reconciled with the ecological imperatives. Changes in the approach and technology is required to bring about required reconciliation between the sustainable development of natural resources as well as agriculture. For development of economy, delay will hamper the economic growth and prove catastrophic to the life support system of 1.394 billion Indians, and likely to reach 1.5 billion by 2030. Further, impact of climate change is perceptible through rise in all India mean temperature and increased frequency of extreme rainfall events in last 3 decades. It is likely to affect the fragile agriculture system, causing fluctuation in production of major crops. As per the National Innovation in Climate Resilient Agriculture, rain-fed rice yield in India is projected to reduce marginally by 2.5% in 2050 and 2080. Irrigated rice by 7% in 2050 and 10% by 2080. The wheat yield to reduce by 6 to 25% and maize 18 to 23%. But likely to benefit is the chickpea production, that is 23 to 54%. This will be primarily because of the development change in the temperature regime in northern India, particularly the cold deserts where they have adopted the chickpea production, chickpea cultivation. Similarly, the modernization program in agriculture was also introduced in high Himalaya, particularly cold desert region of northwest Himalaya, extending from Ladakh in the north and Kinnaur, Himachal Pradesh in south, being a rich natural resource region, confining upper catchment of Indus Basin, housing nearly 500 glacier basins. I have an opportunity of traveling all along these regions, that is from Himachal to Ladakh, that is Kargil, as well as Leh to Sachin Glacier during last 3 decades, and had an opportunity of meeting the people and learn the cultural impact and what sort of how they consider the earth as a sustainer, how they consider the earth and how far they succeeded maintaining it as a sustainable development. It has, further I want to say, it has a further adverse terrain. This whole region has an adverse terrain with relative relief of 2,500 meters or a distance of 5 kilometers. This important relative relief measurement is a very important asset to high cold desert region because this constitutes the component of scientific cultural heritage sites. Okay, and adverse climatic condition of long chilly winters of 8 months and mild summers of 4 months because of its location in shadow zone of Himalaya. The region is economically very viable and is a water bank of North India, contributing a lot to agrarian, industrial, as well as tourist potentialities of North India, providing perennial irrigation as well as generating hydropower. Snow and glacier meltwater contributes nearly 400 to 800 cubic kilometers of water, as well as 100 tons hectare per year of sediments. These are the 2 assets that it provides to the Indus River Basin in the lower catchment region for the development. This is as per the Bahadur 2000. Year 2000. The cold desert has a sparse population with a density of only 5% per square kilometer. Hence, crisis of labor shortage and shortage of growing season leading to drought. In view of these limitations, the modernization program was initiated in this region, particularly in the plain region, along the floodplains of Upper Indus and Upper Satluj Basin, where side by side traditional farming system technique was adopted by local tribe. The Buddhists in Leh and Zanskar and Negis are particularly confined in Kinnaur region, managed by and supervised by the whole thing. That's the agriculture in these regions is managed by Gumpas, that is the Buddhist, that is the temple of the Buddhist monasteries, as well as of the temple of the of the Kinnow region. It is the whole agriculture system is managed as well as run by them. The shortage of manpower as well as growing season was planned by the Gompas administration as well as the temple administration by division of manpower, by particularly involving the women, and provide them services in pastoral activities, by providing training in transhuman skill and dairy, and further in market gardening of organic vegetable, which has a very high demand. For this, they are being employed as well as paid by the government to encourage them to take up such a job so that it will improve the overall the living condition of these region. The women are very dedicated, hardworking, and they manage the things in a very perfect manner. They use the age-old gadgets of wooden drums for churning the milling, yielding the zanskari butter, pashmina yak, fur for the export purpose. And this has a very great market. And because of this, it is being exported to the friendly countries, particularly where Buddhism is enshrined, because actually zanskari butter is considered as a precious item for the lighting purposes and for lighting the candle and other things. Secondly, through cooperative farming system, under the control of Gompa as well as under the supervision of temple, the traditional farming means have been adopted. Recent studies have been carried for the farming system adopted by the local population indicate the traditional farming system adopted by age-old method is more environment friendly than the modern one, as it meets many of its component synthesis indicated on the basis of calculation in time series, according to Vladimir Pelicard 2020. The recent climatic changes with regard to increase in the temperature and the rainfall are supported by the scientific technical measures have encouraged the farmers to use littoral deposits in the form of glacial, fluvial terraces, and alluvial cones for cultivation of wheat instead of barley, where soil is conducive for growth. Further, in adjoining mountains and hilly areas where crop production has a least feasibility, livestock rearing is the natural alternative in Ladakh and Kargil region. Further, in the Kinnow region, because most of the glaciers in the Kinnow region, particularly in the Baspa Valley, they are located in the lower altitude where snout is in the vicinity of 3,000 meters. That way, due to the retreat as well as due to the movement of periglacial region, that area has been vacated. The Kinnoris have utilized that area for the cultivation of cattle, for the cultivation of apple. This way, this has introduced a confidence level in the farmers, because actually they are also using the same method in the lower altitude as for Chilgoza pine nut. So both of these cash crops pay them very handsome, and further it is being substantiated by the vegetable farming, which directly goes to the Delhi market, and that too, it is in the off-season. It is the off-season vegetable that helps the farmers to get maximum return out of it. And that way, most of the Kinnorians, they have actually in the recent decade, they have developed or they have further economically expanded their sphere of influence. So livelihood. So in the end, I just want to tell you that livelihood, sustainable integration, and expansion has helped the market economy of Northwest, the cold glacier regions, because all these are being inhabited by the travels and they are presently utilizing it to the maximum. But one thing I just want to emphasize here, no doubt the government has introduced the modern means, and they have only adopted in the lower region, that is in the vicinity of the plains. But along the rim of the valley, especially in the terraces, they have utilized their own age-old practice and they are getting the maximum yield out of it. And that is also helping them in getting maximum return. And for this, the women are very much encouraged. But unfortunate thing is the women are also under stress because they have to work around 8 hours in the higher reaches or pasture areas, which is called as the doxas, for grazing the cattle, collecting the milk, and later on they have to they churn it into the butter, which they sell it to the market. And in the later hours, especially during the winter season, they move along the roadside and collect the cattle dung, and that is utilized along with they also extract the bushes that is utilized for winter as a fuel. This way they are playing a major role, and throughout they are under stress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Call sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your words of wisdom.
Thanks
Now moving ahead, today we have among us Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor Dr. N.S. Umrani, who has graced this occasion with his presence. Besides as an educational administrator, Umrani sir has served as a research guide in commerce for more than 3 decades, which included teaching, research, and industrial experience. Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor has always been a strong pillar of support to such departmental academic and research activities. I would now like to invite Dr. Umrani sir to express his views and address the gathering. Dr. Umrani sir.
Thank you, madam. Good morning to all. Our respected Vice Chancellor of our university, Head of the Department, Geography, Dr. Javai, Dr. Dikshit sir, Dr. Kaul sir, Dr. Hemlata Patel madam, Dr. Sudhakar Pardeshi, Dr. Kandekar, all the faculty members, participants. At the very outset, I appreciate the step taken by the Department of Geography of our university. At the same time, I appreciate the topic they have chosen for the discussion and deliberation at national level today, especially in the situation of catastrophic situation of pandemic COVID-19. We all are passing through very, very difficult times. In our life, we have not seen such great crisis. Therefore, we need to come together. We have to revisit our concepts, programs, policies that already in the existence, in vogue. Many changes are required in education, in policies, in governance, even in the selection approach of research areas also. And hence this national seminar is very, very pertinent in that direction. Basically, our university believes, and fundamentally we are aware of the fact that there is a strong, close connection between environment, education, economy, and even ethics. Therefore, all programs, our curriculum or pedagogy, even our style of evaluation, these all things are dependent on this basic belief. In the beginning, Dr. Jayabhai sir elaborated the programs we run in geography department.
Hello.
Such many important programs and schemes we run in various academic departments. We have 52 plus academic departments. All these academic departments are well known there. Quality research, innovation, and recently we have entered into the arena of startup incubation in large scale under the able leadership of our Vice Chancellor. Friends, we need to understand and educate the people and communicate in very, very simple and regional language that our whole existence of mankind is largely dependent on water, air, and soil quality, and how to protect all those things. We need to have discussion, deliberation, and we need to take the scientific conclusions to the grassroots level, because we know the situation at bottom of the pyramid in our country. This bottom is suffering from great poverty, unemployment, inequality. Therefore, we need to understand and communicate and create awareness among the masses under the scheme of lab to land. We academicians, teachers, researchers, experts are expected to take the knowledge that is happening on the campus to the grassroots level, because at grassroots level their lives and livelihoods are basically dependent on ecology and environment. These concepts like global warming, climate change, they do not understand, but it is our duty, it is our responsibility to make it very, very easy to convey it in regional language, in simple language, so that their lifestyle, their thinking pattern, and their working in their field in farming might be changed in large extent. Sustainable development is not possible without, I think, sustainable consumption. Consumption pattern has to be changed to the great extent from urban to rural. We need to curtail or reduce or stop single-use plastic everywhere. At the same time, we have to curtail down the use of fossil fuel. These are the important things. I think whatever happening, research is happening on the university, that should be taken to the masses. That is our responsibility. Yes, deliberation, discussion, research paper, all those things are okay. But that knowledge, that expertise, that input has to be taken to the bottom of the pyramid. I appeal all the experts to think in this way. And I think today's deliberation and discussion will be fruitful, not only for the experts and teachers, would be fruitful for the society around us. Once again, I congratulate Department of Geography for organizing this national seminar. Thank you so very much. All the best for this important seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of the entire department, I sincerely extend my our gratitude for gracing this occasion and always motivating us to carry out such academic endeavors. The next distinguished guest of honor we have with us is Professor K.R. Dikshit. It is definitely a rare and a golden opportunity to listen to the words of such a great knowledgeable person. Before I request Professor Dikshit to address the gathering, I would like to ask Professor Jaibai to introduce him. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, it's truly an honor to introduce Professor K.R. Dikshit. Actually, he doesn't require any introduction. I would say he is a fatherly figure to the Indian geographers. He was professor in Department of Geography, Savitribai Phule University, Pune, an established branch of geomorphology in the department. He is a founder of IIG, Institute of Indian Geographers. Presently, he is a patron of IIG. Under his guidance, the journal of the IIG transaction evolved one of the leading and prestigious journals in India. He is a true disciple of geography by contributing to the original thoughts on geography in India. And last more than 6 decades, he has been actively contributing to the academia, specifically in the field of geography. At his age of 90s, he wrote a voluminous monumental work of more than 700 pages on Northeast India, land and people. It was published by Springer, and as he's approaching at the age of 93, he's almost completed a book on Pakistan and soon will be published by a reputed publisher. Age is not barrier for him. As currently looking to his active participation in publication, discussion and lectures at national and international level, seminar and conferences. So we are fortunate that the most illustrious geographer of the country, Professor K.R. Dikshit, is here with us for the delivering his thought. So thank you, sir, for gracing this presence. So over to you, Dikshit. Sir, unmute the mic, sir.
Can you hear now?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, thank you very much. Professor Karmalkar, esteemed Vice Chancellor of this university, Professor Imrani, the Pro-Vice Chancellor of this university, Professor Paul, the President of the IIG, Professor Jaibai, the convener of this conference, Professor Pardesi, Professor Dode, Dr. Patel, members of the faculty, participants of the conference, and other listeners. To start with, I would like to thank the Department of Geography and the organization of the conference for inviting me to address all of you. But before that I have read this morning in the newspaper that Savitribai Phule Pune University has got up a few notches above in the international assessment and ranking of the university. I think they deserve congratulations. The Vice Chancellor, his faculty, the staff, everyone who has contributed to the growth and success of the university deserve congratulations. At the same time, I also thank and congratulate the faculty and the organization of this conference. Now, this environment and livelihood for sustainability and economic development is an old hat. We have been talking of it since long. And if I'm permitted to paraphrase, I might say this is protection, preservation of the environment on the one hand, and the economic development on the other. There has been some kind of conflict between the two. It is very difficult. You cannot attain a level of equilibrium, like sort of as in nature. But certainly there should be some kind of balance between economic development and environment. Too much talk about environment. Now, it is never enough. But ever since the issue of environment erupted on the university campuses, in the society and elsewhere, somewhere in the beginning of the 1970s, more specifically of the Stockholm conference, people have been talking of environment. Added to that, we have the global warming and the climate change. Now, environment protection, global warming, climate change, all that put together has been included in nature. So how we preserve the nature, how we protect the nature, and how at the same time we develop economically, we remove the poverty of the people, there is equilibrium in distribution. This is a very tricky question. This has bothered the humanity since long. It's bothering even today. Now, I would like to say something that we should not be alarmed, somewhere if a dam is made or a tree is cut or a nala is filled or a wetland is eliminated. The humanity right since inception has been living on environmental resources. Maybe the land, maybe the plant life, maybe animal life, we have been living off them because we are not the producers. The producers of the plants, we are the consumers for the animals. We don't produce, humans don't produce it. We produce mechanical devices or we cultivate and exploit those producers and we generate something, but we are not producers, we are largely consumers. Now there has got to be balance. You imagine several centuries ago, what must have been the plateau of Maharashtra or what must have been the Gangetic Plain. There must have been a lot of forests which have been slowly, gradually cleared. And the humanity couldn't have survived. Even at the time Rig or subsequently, people used to burn the forest to cultivate land or to make land available for cultivation. So this has been a very economic process. At the same time, the population was virtually standstill. The explosion of population has taken place obviously much more after the Second World War. In fact, 1950 is supposed to be the watershed in Indian population growth. Suddenly, the death rate went down, the birth rate continued, and naturally we multiplied and multiplied. Now, today, as someone was talking about 1,003 billion or 1,004 billion, almost 1/5 or 1/6 of the world population, with resources not comparable. So we all the time, we don't blame ourselves, we should blame ourselves. If India's population had been planned and controlled long ago, everything would have fallen in place. It would have remained poor, but not so much as today. And this was brought to the notice of Pandit Nehru and many others. They thought, that the larger the population growth, the larger is the national power. That was generally the understanding. So we grew enormously till we have come to the stage. Of course, today, the fertility rate in India has gone down. I don't know, it's 2.1 or something, but it's almost have reached a level where we can sustain the population. So on the one hand, it has been the population, and as the population grew, naturally the axe fell on nature. The forests were cleared, the grass were cleared, the expansion of cultivation took place. Without that, we could not survive. To the extent they started hurting us. But I have only one thing to say, and that is the preservation and protection of environment has also certain limitations. India has lost a lot of opportunities by misconceived notion of preservation of environment. Like there has been a controversy about the big dams and small dams. And this lasted for several decades. Every geographer or earth scientist knows that you draw a longitudinal profile of a river, and you put a dam of different height. So if the height becomes twice, the volume of the water stored increases 10 times or perhaps more. The water spreads much longer. Now imagine Saurashtra, Kutch, they have become green areas today. And why? Because Narmada Dam came. But I know Narmada, it had started, the project had started somewhere in the late 50s or early 60s. It took such a long time. A lot of protests in the name of environment. A lot of protests in the name of rehabilitation of the people. A lot of protests in the name of the tribals are losing their heart. Yes, some people will be displaced. Their rehabilitation should be priorities. But how to grow, how to economically develop, how to support our population. These are issues that we have to consider besides preserving the environment. Now, I'm certainly one like anyone else for biodiversity because it conserves much food material, for the fuel material, for the medicinal plants. And the United Nations, they have recognized certain hotspots, some in Western Ghats, some in the eastern areas. The emphasis, unfortunately, is only in the Western Ghats. That there are some forest preserve and maybe in Himalayas. Huge chunks of forest in the eastern part of India, whether it's Manipur, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, or elsewhere, they are being destroyed because they still practice shifting cultivation, burn large patches of forest. When there was opposition, I remember Sangma used to be the speaker in the Lok Sabha. He got up and said, no, this is our cultural practice. You cannot stop it. So there the biodiversity and all that we want to preserve goes by a toss, thrown overboard, nobody bothers. For the recent example of Subansiri River, the lower Subansiri River, there was a project in Arunachal, like the generation of hydroelectric power. Now the Arunachalis claim that they produce about, I don't know how many, 40,000 or 50,000 megawatts of power. And he said, we can live off the income of this. But if this doesn't develop, even one river you don't allow to develop power, how the country is going to grow. So whether it's a question of economic corridor, whether it's a question of intensive cultivation, whether it's a question of making some dams, or if there's a question of taking some road somewhere, or the lines of communication, the society and we all have to be more rational. In the sense, on the one hand, we do care for the preservation of nature, for biodiversity, for animal protection, for tiger sanctuary. At the same time, we have to be careful that we don't perpetually remain poor protecting the nature or protecting the environment. Other things are other side is equally important. Now about the livelihood, in fact, Professor Jayabhai, while fixing the title, seemed to have paraphrased the same thing, sustainability and livelihood. The sustainability, the word emerged sometimes in the 70s. And we all know that William Grant was the chairman of the committee, and they wrote a voluminous report about One Earth or something like that. And they talked that the resources, the way we are utilizing them, are not sustainable. And the sustainability principle was defined as our consumption or use of material or resources in such a way that there's enough left for future generation. They also have a title of right to the use of the resources that are there, and we cannot consume everything. So we consume in such a rational way that it balances or is equal to its regenerative potential, the forest or the animal life. But the world doesn't bother. Look at the whaling pattern of Japanese. In the name of scientific research, whaling has been stopped, but they go on and on and on. The world is importing a lot of heat from Burma, protecting their own forest. And of course, Dr. Paul has thrown considerable light on the climate change and what is happening, how much it's related to the rise in temperature, how much is related to natural variation. But certainly we know the carbon content, the carbon dioxide content atmosphere has crossed about 400 parts per million. Maybe earlier it was in last century about 260 or 270, I don't remember. And certainly, whether it's carbon dioxide or nitrous oxide or ozone, the GHG gases, when they accumulate, certainly they stop the terrestrial radiation and the heat develops. So regardless of how much temperature is measured there, it is a fact, infer that this must be causing a blanket effect and the rise in temperature. Now, here is another point. One doesn't have to be alarmist in the sense, oh, the Dhaka is going to be washed away in 25 years. In the next, by the end of the century, sea level is going to rise 75 centimeters. Many predictions that have been proved false. I'm not saying that there is no global warming, but its impact, I believe in human unity. I believe in the resourcefulness of the mankind. We can certainly devise methods. We can mitigate the situation. We can certainly see that new breeds of plants develop. We can see that we can develop resources that can mitigate the temperatures. I mean, one doesn't have to alarm all the time. Though, as far the researchers in climate change, I don't know. I think it is essentially a question of compiling the temperature variations over the years or indirect reference. There may be increase and the explanation is indirect. Oh, there is a carbon blanket, you have got this. And look at the amount of tussle that is going on in the world. India was one of the earliest countries that, okay, we'll go for solar energy, but have the Chinese agree? Have the Americans agree? They have the greatest power. In fact, the President of the United States, last month, President Trump, he walked out of the Paris conference. I mean, the resolution of the Paris conference, he was not there. That was agreed upon, or that was concluded by President Obama. Yeah. Why? Well, he thinks, no, it is all fictitious. There is no climate change. There is no warming. It is all to stop our industrial growth. Now, the world is thinking like that. And they said, America first, America first. So every country is pulling its own direction. In the sense, they think of their own development, own economy, own prospects, and the rest be done. Now, this is the world order. This is the situation. What do we do in this? How do we remove poverty? How do we care for the livelihood? One thing I must say that India, there is a loss of balance and equilibrium in the rural society and the urban society. The rural society depends largely on agriculture, which supports it about 14 to 15% of the national income, national GDP. Much of it comes from services, and a large part of it comes from manufacturing. So, Mr. Umbranikar was talking, perhaps very justifiably, incorrectly, that things should move from the labs to the countryside, the rural area. And what is rural area? Agriculture, agriculture, agriculture. So we have this institute, Indian Council of Agricultural Research. It's a very old organization. It was perhaps the 19th century organization, starting early British period. It has grown now. They are looking after it. They develop variety of seeds, variety of plants, how to improve crop rotation, diversification of crops. These are the methods which are being adopted. Certainly, there is a need to increase our income. India's income is about, I don't know, $1,800 in the nominal terms. Nominal terms are those you take it as it is and you don't convert into price purchasing parity. And the world average is about 18,000-20,000. So we don't come even the average. And our place in the world, global order, income is some 70% below, maybe some 170 or grand. So this is the situation. India is going to be the fifth largest economy of the world. Maybe after United States, China, Germany, we are overtaking UK. These are very false pretensions and false. So India still is very poor. If a large number of people in the countryside were poor, and what can be done, that is one thing which we thought, which Jai said that we should think about it. Now, one thing I can tell you about this pandemic, pandemic has, and the migration of people, this has exposed the underbelly of India. We always knew about the poverty in terms of number. Oh, 25% people are, 30% are poor. Apply Tendulkar formula, apply Manmohan Singh formula, apply Kelkar formula. No, 30%, 25%, this is the poverty. We have got down the level of poverty. But those of us, and practically all of us, who have allowed the migrant workers moving from Rajkot, Surat, Bombay, Bangalore, anywhere, some on bicycle, some on foot, all in desperation. Then we knew how poor we are. Our poverty is exposed. But who's responsible? We are all responsible. Any person, any section of the society, limb of the entire body, and we cannot say, oh, damn it, they are not working hard, they are useless, they are not educating, they prefer this, they are becoming. No, this is no use. This is part of our society. Everyone has to struggle, everyone has to sympathize, everyone has to see what we can do best. So long as we don't improve, all the pretensions of power is futile. As it is, we must look at the underdog, the last person in the line, the poorest of the poor, and he has to be uplifted. Now, that poorest of the poor doesn't know really speaking about environment. He absolutely doesn't. I'll give you an example. Dr. Kaul has given a research finding of what he has found in Ladakh, and what the glaciers are behaving. But I can tell you that the people of forest, they still believe they have certain right to collect goods. The moment they do that, the people, the educated people like us, oh, they are destroying the forest. So, personally, I feel unless you provide them alternative, you have no right to say. Are they hunting somewhere? Are they fishing somewhere? The poor people of the country, who are not privileged, I mean, I get my meals, I have a very good shelter, I live comfortably, and there are lots of my brothers and who don't have this. But if they try to do something, we say, no, 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 don't cut this tree, don't cut this forest, don't go hunting, don't go fishing. There's a contradiction. And how we remove this contradiction, I do not know. How far we go in the nature. We must provide before we tell them something to do or not to do. That should be the basic principle. The poor man in the forest, the tribals, I mean, one of Dr. Jayabhai's friends used to marginalize groups. They will earn their living the way they like from anywhere, unless we provide them and say, this is what you should do. Now, how we do it, we really do not know. Maybe we industrialize. The moment you industrialize, then you say, oh, you are causing so much pollution, so much emission, so much this, so much that. So, what we can do as a golfer, I really do not know. But certainly, the migration is a pattern we can certainly attend and see how people are migrating different areas. This kind of migration we haven't seen earlier. In fact, I was talking the other day to Surika, and I said we did not seriously think of migration either, whether it is the early migration of prehistoric, also in the interlabor, or in the industrial or rural migration, and now seasonal migration, and now migration certainly because of the pandemic. How the population has dispersed, how poor they are, what is the disparity, I really do not know. Now, how you care for their livelihood, I don't know. And what role you can play, I don't know. But one thing is, I'd like to tell you, agriculture has limited potential. I had a talk once with Giri Sharma at a conference somewhere in the north Delhi, and I had serious discussion. I said the land is limited to certainly increase the productivity. I wrote a dissertation by a master's in 1954 on food problem of India. And why I wrote, I mean, as incident I tell you, because Dr. Chubar, who was my professor and head of the department, said, go to Dibrugarh and write a dissertation. I said, sir, neither I have money, I cannot go alone with you. So, then what can you do? I said, go to the library and write a dissertation on food problem of India. And incidentally, by the way, I must have been distraction. One day, Sarfaraz Alam, he told me, sir, I have seen your dissertation about food plot written in 1954. I said, I don't know what I wrote. Oh, no, it's not that. But maybe we were very much concerned there was not enough food. The technological development, the technological upgradation, technological solution, all these have to be found. Two things. First, there's too much of spiritualism in India. Whether it's spiritualism or I don't know. This is my personal view. If I hurt anyone, please excuse me. 15 minutes are over, yeah, bhai? Hello? 15 minutes are over? Or nobody is listening?
No, we are listening, sir.
The 15 minutes are over?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I'll close. So many, sadhus, so many munis, so many acharyas, so many people subdiving and say this god and that god and this thing. No. The best thing is those people who are really acharyas, they should say, be honest, work hard, improve your conduct, don't hurt others. These are the mantras. So we treat all people equally, we don't hurt others, we be kind to people, perhaps things will improve rather than hundreds and thousands of people traveling around as sadhus or teaching others, big gatherings, collecting a lot of money. This is something. For everything, I think it is good that we try to find technical solution. Now, how to introduce the concept where you can have this equity, that's a great thing. When you think too much of equity, then production goes down. When we say, oh, these are the entrepreneurs, let them produce, they fill in their own pocket and they become, accumulate billions. So this contradiction is a problem which I don't want to solve. But I think we preserve environment, we preserve diversity, don't make a fetish of it. Secondly, human beings are more important to me, or as important, if not more, as nature and environment. Take care of human beings. Now, how to uplift them, how to make sure of ensure their livelihood, particularly the countryside, is what we have to think. Agriculture has limited scope. You can take to the countryside some medical treatment, facilities, transport, dispensaries, education very important. And Galbraith was leaving India, he was the American ambassador in Nehru's time. He gave a series of lectures in the university. And he said, he hasn't to come across a society which is educated and poor. And I think if we educate the people properly, particularly we have to fix the primary education, primary and secondary, people will take care of themselves. They will work hard, they will be good, but they certainly would not remain poor. There are many things, many scholars will add. I have talked to you at random, whatever I feel. These are my views. And thank you once again with this I close. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dikshit sir. Thank you for sharing the various facets of the human environment interactions. Your speech has enlightened all of us with your valuable deep knowledge and insights. Now, moving ahead, I'm extremely privileged to welcome our chief guest of this inaugural function, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Nitin Karmarkar. Thank you, sir, for giving us your precious time. Honorable Vice Chancellor Karmarkar, sir, hardly needs any introduction. He has made us all of us proud with his distinguished work in numerous capacities. Besides an efficient administrator, he is a well-known scientist in the field of igneous petrology. Professor Karmarkar, a former head of Department of Environment Science and Department of Geology, he has more than 25 years of teaching and numerous research publications in various national and international journals. Professor Karmarkar has research interest in igneous petrology with special emphasis on the mantle petrography and geochemistry, rift-related alkaline magnetism, and economic geology. Taking in consideration the theme of this conference, national conference, environment, development, and earth, I would like to invite Professor Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Nitin Karmarkar, to please address the gathering.
Thank you. Very good morning to every one of you. Respected Dikshit sir, respected Kaul sir, Professor Ravindra Jaibai, my colleague and presently head of the Department of Geography, the former head, Professor Veena Joshi, my own colleague from the campus, the Vice Chancellor Umrani sir, and many more, many of the familiar faces I can see. But if I start taking everybody's name, perhaps the given time that is given to me basically just 10 to 15 minutes. Indeed, it is a pleasure that the Department of Geography, especially Jaibai, who is very proactive, and every year, along with the Deccan geographers, perhaps an annual conference, national level or sometimes at state level, has been basically the USP of this particular department. And being a neighbor in the neighborhood, being from geology, obviously, most of the time, I always make it a point to attend these conferences. Of course, because of the pandemic, we all know that this is the new normal that we adopted, conducting conferences in online mode. And the topic basically that is chosen, the sustainable earth, livelihood, environment, all are very near and dear subject to everyone who is in the field of earth sciences as such. Although by profession, I'm an igneous petrologist, so I have worked more extensively on the igneous rocks, the rocks generated out of volcanic activity as such. And even whenever there is a volcanic eruption also, it adversely affects the climatic scenarios. The best example, perhaps in the state of Maharashtra, we have the one kind of rock that we see, the basalt belonging to the Deccan volcanic province. And 65 million years before time, this particular volcanic eruption that took place and went on for 1 million years, for a duration of about 10 lakhs of years. And the adverse effect, in fact, it to a great extent gave a severe blow to the ecological stability of the planet Earth. And not necessarily only the Indian subcontinent as such, but the effect was seen world over. And we all know that the extinction of dinosaurs and many more basically species that all got extinct because of this particular natural calamity. But this was a natural one. But in the course of development and development for the human being, all the development projects that we undertaken in recent times actually to a great extent has adversely affected the overall ecosystem. In fact, this year's on the National Environment Day, the theme that they have chosen, the ecological restoration, that is basically the topic. And that topic is going to go on for next, almost say, till about 2030. So next decade, in fact, we will be following up this particular thing as well. We all know how basically the environment works or how it has come into basically in existence. Those who are from geology, we all are aware that when we speak about geology, when we speak about earth science, we are always bothered about the 4 spheres and a seamless interaction that happens among these 4 spheres, which include the lithosphere, the hydrosphere, the atmosphere. And then because of the linkage and perhaps the equilibrium they maintain, the 4 sphere that got generated is the biosphere as such. And to sustain this particular biosphere, or rather to meet the demands of the biosphere, in fact, we to a great extent exploited the other 3 spheres as such, and indirectly that actually has disturbed the equilibrium as such. Although the thing like climate change, global warming, they are common word these days, been spoken almost by everyone as such. But let me candidly admit that our contribution to the climate change is just 3%. And most of the Western countries, whether it is Europe, whether it is America, China, all European countries, for last 150 years have exploited everything, all natural sources as well as basically, and they to a great extent are responsible for the climate change. Of course, we are not part of the problem. We have not created this problem, but we want to be part of the solution. We equally intend to basically participate in this whatever programs that are undertaken to make this or to restore the ecosystem or to a great extent make all the achievement of the all sustainable development goals. And that is how we are participating in it. And today also, when we are progressing, we are doing development and so on and so forth. Today also, basically, our contribution, especially in the through the industrial development, I'm giving out all those carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, that comes to not even more than 7%. So we shouldn't be cribbing for the sins some other people have committed us. We are concerned, we are bothered about the environment, we are bothered about basically the planet Earth. Ours is a very populous country, 130 crores of people, and their existence and their livelihood and their demands. To meet those demands, obviously the development is necessary, and we must try actually to maintain basically some kind of a balance while developing. When the development is happening, obviously we must also should have a concern about the other things, basically all the remaining spheres, whether it is basically the hydrosphere, the water that we speak of, the air quality we speak of, even the land degradation many times that has happened, and so on and so forth. So we must, I'm not saying that we should be responsible, but at the same time, again, I highlight it and candidly say it, that we shouldn't be cribbing for what is happening out there in the climate change. Of course, when the climate change is happening, to a great extent is going to affect us also. Professor Dikshit sir was mentioning about basically the development that took place in the Rajasthan and Gujarat region through the Narmada river system as such. But at the same time, maybe the what is called as the Indira Gandhi Nahar Yojana, they call it, and all that. But over there, I remember being a student of geology, have visited those places number of times. But in an ecosystem where there wasn't a plenty of water, when we introduced water, what was the aftermath? Yes, there is a plenty of greenery that has come in, but that to a great extent also have created so much of a solifluction that have in fact spoiled the quality of basically the soil in that particular region. So whenever we undertake any such projects also, we must actually do the introspection, what are going to be the effects of such developmental project assets. And then only, after looking at basically what was the repercussion of it, then we must think of whether to implement it or not. And every time it so happens, we have seen development is necessary. Development is necessary. We require dams, we require basically an impound of water. The demands are so much, like the agriculture, to make it basically a sustainable kind of agriculture. More land would come under this irrigation. And for the irrigation purpose, basically, we require to have storage of water. But again, in those areas also, there has to be an in-depth study. Being a student of geology and very been situated in Pune, the most vivid example that I can give you is of the Koina Reservoir. When it gets filled in completely, then there is a triggering of seismicity as such. And of course, till say last almost 30 odd years, we haven't had any devastating kind of earthquake. But yes, there is a reservoir-induced seismicity. So while doing a particular project also, we must also inspect what repercussions it would carry. And therefore, the development, whenever we undertake development, we have to be very careful in maintaining the balance. When you disturb the balance, obviously, there are going to be issues as such. We can't actually at the same time ignore, as sir was mentioning about, that such a populous country, and to make their living, we have to have development. Whether it is a road project, and especially anything that you do is bound to create some kind of an imbalance as such. When we widen the road, we have seen basically what kind of a mess that we created. I can go on giving the example, and in many of those areas I have worked as a consultant. For example, while going on the expressway to Mumbai, on the either side, if you look at basically the overall face of those mountains is completely, we have made it so nasty. So much of exploitation we had done for the purpose of recovery of the road metal assets. But when it comes to restoration, we have not paid any attention to it. We have left it as it is. So there has to be mining reclamation, mining restoration, those kind of things. So that has not happened. In most of the project, of course, we speak of so many things. We underline that these are the things that would be done subsequent to the development of this particular area as such. But there are no stringent sort of, I would say, regulations. So we have taken them very casually, I would call it. Whether it is mining, whether it is opening up a new road, whether it is basically widening of new road while constructing basically a dam. Of course, there is a general awareness that is getting created among so many of us, and we keep on. But at the same time, it should not be just, I would say, whatever statement, whatever argument that we make has to be with full sort of understanding or with full data as such. And that is what is the need of the time. And therefore, togetherness or rather working together. All these days we have worked in silos as such. And therefore, unless and until we all to come together and make a multidisciplinary kind of effort, things would not be happening the way we are expecting them to happen as such. And therefore, during this today's discussion, today, tomorrow, and day after, I'm pretty sure many of the subject experts from various different areas, they to a great extent would be contributing. To a great extent, there would be a brainstorm, deliberation, discussions on various different issues as such. Livelihood, of course, that's not my cup of tea in the sense like I've been basically more concerned with geology. Environment, by the way, basically I have done it. The reason being, in the peripheral part, I work more on the groundwater part, but we have seen to a great extent in the groundwater is deeply getting contaminated. And for exploitation, in fact, we have gone much deeper as such. And then that has given to an extent way to the new problems, whether it is arsenic pollution or whether so many related things that we actually, to a great extent, those actually got created by our own intervention in the system as such. So for each thing that we do, there is going to be a counter sort of a reaction that's going to happen as such. And therefore, while doing anything, we must see what is going to happen, what are going to be the effects of a particular thing that we are doing as such. So it's indeed a pleasure that today, tomorrow, and day after, plenty of, in fact, subject experts in this particular area would be speaking more on this. They would be deliberating on various different elements of the earth system, whether it's the environment, whether it's water, whether it's quality related to water as air, land degradation, and so many other things. So I'm pretty sure the outcomes of such conference to a great extent would be of value, especially for the policy makers or policy advisors. So I congratulate Professor Jai Bhai for undertaking this initiative. And this has been a regular feature, I must admit. This has been basically, geography has been very proactive in such areas. And therefore, I must congratulate the geographers and Department of Geography. Every year, perhaps, such kind of an activity or initiatives has been the USP of this particular department. And no wonder why today the university is actually reaching to the heights Sir was mentioning about, especially today the QS ranking has been declared. And last year we were in the bracket of 700 and 800. We have come down, we have risen by 200 in the sense we are now 591 to 600, that is a category. And that all is happening only because of the effort that are put in by individuals like Jaibai and basically many other faculties on the campus who are actually constantly proactively engaged in many such initiatives. So I congratulate every one of you and thank you so very much for giving me this opportunity to share my views. Of course, I am being a geology person. I can speak more about the geological things, whether it is mining or whether it is igneous petrology and things like. I'm not a real expert in the area that is being chosen for this particular webinar. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your views and motivating all of us to come together, work together for saving our environment. We really appreciate you taking out time for us from your busy schedule. It's always been a pleasure to have you with us, and we look forward to see you again for all such upcoming workshops and seminars of the department. As we near to the conclusion of this official inaugural function and start with the plenary sessions, I would like to invite my colleague, Professor Sudhakar Pardeshi, to offer vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Patel Madam. A very warm welcome and good morning to all of you. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Nitin Karmalkar, sir. Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor Umrani, sir. Professor M.N. Kaul, Professor Dikshit, Professor Jaibhai, Coordinator, and all the colleagues from the department and the fraternity of geography from all over the country. I welcome you all and very good morning to you all. The web conference titled Environment, Development and Livelihood, Sustaining the Earth and the People, jointly organized by Department of Geography and IIG Pune. In the same line, I would like to quote George Bernard, "Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything." So this is the platform where we came together to ignite and to change the minds to work for the environment and to make it more sustainable. I, on behalf of the organizing committee and the Department of Geography, Savitribai Phule Pune University, grateful to IIG and all the executive members of IIG for giving us this chance to organize this particular web conference in such a chaotic time of pandemic. I take this opportunity to thank Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor Karmalkar sir and Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor Professor Umrani sir, who made it possible to be here and grace the inaugural function. I'm thankful to university authorities, Savitribai Phule Pune University and IIG for the financial and logistic support. Besides this, the organizing committee is grateful to Professor M.N. Kaul, President IIG, Professor R.B. Singh, our own Professor K.R. Dikshit, the patron of IIG, to be here amongst us and grace the function. I also take this opportunity to thank all the stalwarts of geography from different universities of the country who are present to grace this function. It is a very long list and I cannot read all the names and I cannot take all the names. So it is for all those who are present here and those who are going to contribute in one or other way in this particular web conference. We are really indebted to all the speakers of plenary session and technical session who agreed to deliver the lectures. It is indeed a great support we receive from our own colleagues, the faculty members, and the very much cooperative administrative staff. Special thanks to our administrative staff. Because of them only this has been possible. There are many faculty members of geography from different affiliated colleges and also our past and present research scholars who supported us a lot through their active participation. We are very much thankful to all of you. And the most important part of this conference is the participants who have taken keen interest in this conference. We are really indebted to all of you. We, the organizing committee members, look forward for such kind of cooperation from all of you. Thank you all for your continuous support. Lastly, I end the vote of thanks with the prayer in Sanskrit, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, which means may everyone in the whole world be happy. Thank you all, and please continue to the web series, to the web seminar for this particular session, the plenary session that is upcoming at 12 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pardeshi sir. Now I officially declare the conclusion of this inaugural function of the National Workshop, Nationals Conference. Now we start with the plenary session. I invite Professor Sudhakar Pardeshi again, who will be the in charge for the plenary session. Please stay here on the same official web link for all the plenary sessions. Over to you, Pardeshi sir.
Thank you, madam. I would like to start this plenary session. Before that, I invite Professor R.B. Singh to chair this particular session. Professor R.B. Singh.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir. Now, before I start this session, I would like to introduce Professor R.B. Singh. I know it is not required to introduce Professor R.B. Singh amongst the fraternity of geography. We know the professor in different dimensions. Professor R.B. Singh was a coordinator UGC SAP ERS for 2014 to 19, and he was head of the Department of Geography, Delhi School of Economics, University of Delhi. He served as UGC Research Scientist B Reader in 88 to 96, then lecturer 85 to 88, and CSIR Pool Officer 1983 to 1985. Recently, Professor Singh got elected as the first Indian and second Asian Secretary General and Treasurer of the International Geographical Union for the period of 2018 to 2022. Professor Singh was Chair, Research Council, CSIR Central Food Technological Research Institute, Mysore, and ex-member of Research Council, CSIR Central Institute of Medicinal and Aromatic Plants, Lucknow. He was also member of International Science Council, it was ICSU. Professor Singh was Vice President, International Geographical Union since 2012 and is elected again for the second consecutive term for 2016-2018 of the highest world geographical body. He is invited by IAP Global Network of Science Academies to join Working Group for Statement on Science and Technology for Disaster Risk Reduction. He was unanimously elected President of the Earth System Science Section of the Indian Science Congress Association for 2019-20. Niti Aayog, Government of India, invited him as a member of the prestigious committee for preparing Vision India 2035. He was chair of Task Force Landslide Awareness National Disaster Management Authority, Government of India for 2018-19. He is also part of International Science Council Joe Union Committee on Risk and Disaster Management. He is associated with prestigious programs such as co-chair ISC, CODATA, PASTED, PASTED actually, member Earth System Governance and IAP Global Network of Science and Academies. He is one of the three founders of the Center for Himalayan Studies, University of Delhi. He has to his credit 15 books, 41 edited research volumes, and more than 47 research papers, including 123 published in national and reputed international journals. Amongst them, remote sensing, climate dynamics, current science, then Singapore Journal of Tropical Geography, then theoretical and applied climatology. There are many more journals in which Professor Singh has contributed. In 1988, the UNESCO ISSC Paris awarded him Research and Study Grants Award in Social and Human Sciences. He was also associated with prestigious international collaborative research programs such as BRICS, ICSSR, IDPAD, CIDA, SCICE, and Finland Academy of Sciences, UGC, and Ministry of Agriculture. He has supervised 40 PhD and 81 MPhil students. Currently, he is Springer Series editor of Advances in Geographical and Environmental Sciences, Sustainable Development Goals. He was awarded prestigious Japan Society for Promotion of Science, JSPS Research Fellowship at Hiroshima in 2013, and several such travel fellowships and supports from different organizations such as UNEP, UNI, TAR, UNI, SDR, IAP, UNU, UNCRD, WCRP, IAHS, IGU, NASDA, INSA, UGC, SICI, University of Delhi, etc. There are many such organizations who have awarded Professor R.B. Singh. He was also associated with Nordic Institute of Asian Studies, Copenhagen, Denmark in 1998, and visiting professor at University of Turku, Finland. He was one of the contributors in the famous The World Atlas Earth Concise Millennium House Limited, Australia. He was invited for preparing national level CBCS syllabus for undergraduate geography in 2015. And he is also chair of UGC prestigious committee for preparing learning outcome-based curriculum framework since July 2018. Recently, UGC Consortium for Educational Communication invited him as an academic advisory council for CEC MOOCs on Swayam. He has been chairman governing body of the two prestigious Delhi University colleges, that is Kamala Nehru College and Shahid Bhagat Singh College. He has been expert in prestigious committees of the Government of India, Ministry of Environment and Forest, Department of Science and Technology, National Disaster Management Authority, ICSSR, CSIR, UGC, UGC CEC, NCERT, UPSC, and NIOS, etc. He is fellow of National Institute of Ecology. There are many more things to talk about him, but due to a shortage of time, I have cut short this biodata. I welcome you, Professor R.B. Singh, to chair this particular plenary session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Pardeshi, Hemlata Patel here. Sir, I just want to, before Professor R.B. Singh starts his sessioning the chair, I would like to request, I have to make a small announcement with the permission, of course, with Professor R.B. Singh. Can I, sir?
Yes, please.
Due to this pandemic, we have lost many of our faculty, fraternity from geography and all those related to geography. So we thought this conference as a platform to share our condolences to all the families who have passed away in this pandemic. So I request Professor T.K. Naik sir to please offer condolences to all those people. Professor D.K. Naik sir.
Esteemed Professor M.N. Kaul, sir, President IIT, Professor R.B. Singh, the chair of this session, respected dignitaries, dear colleagues, esteemed guests, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. I have the most unpleasant duty today of mentioning the most devastating news of the loss of so many of fellow geographers who have left us during the last 1 year and 6 months, if not entirely, but largely on account of the ongoing tsunami of deaths in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic that has shattered the world in more than one ways. It is with deep sense of sorrow that we have come to condole the passing away of a large number of our colleagues from different academic institutions from all over the country. The last few months have been particularly cruel in snatching from us so many of our colleagues and dear ones from all age groups, shattering their families and loved ones. This pandemic has been brutally unsparing. The enormity of the shadow of death has been so huge that it has left all of us completely numb and devastated. We have often shuddered to open our WhatsApp messages fearing the worst. Most of us have struggled to process such huge number of death news, which got bigger by the day. Carrying on normal seemed inadequate. Statistics lost all meaning. Some of us have suffered the loss of our own family members or very close relatives and friends. With a heavy heart and most reluctantly, I struggle to compile a list of those geographers who have left this mortal world during the past several months. The list is by no means exhaustive and might have excluded a few about whom I have no information. We remember all of them today. I feel miserable in mentioning the names of these departed souls, which is why I said in the outset that this is the most unpleasant duty I have been assigned. I wish all of them were present in this seminar today. With a lump in my throat, I read out the names of those departed souls. Professor Mantu Mohan Jana from NBU, Professor S.S. Ojha of Banaras Hindu University, Professor Ambadas Jadhav of Bombay University, Professor Jasbir Singh from Kurukshetra University, Professor R.D. Dixit from MD University, Professor Sudipto Adhikari from Patna University, Professor P.R. Sarma, BHU, Professor R.P. Mishra, Professor Ravi S. Singh from BHU, Professor R.K. Rai, Nehu, Professor S.I. Biradar, Karnataka University, Professor R.N. Vyas, Mohanlal Sukhadia University, Udaipur, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Chaudhary, Government College, Narnaul, Haryana, Dr. Sana Shida Navar, Department of Geography, Mysore University, Professor M.K. Bandyopadhyay, Professor Arjun Kumbhar, Chhatrapati Shivaji College, Satara, Professor R.B. Jadhav, Banaras Hindu University, Dr. Kamal Narayan Sharma, BRA, Bihar University, Muzaffarpur, Professor Hemavati Reddy, Karnataka University, Professor Hiralal Gupta, LN Mithila University, Dr. R.S. Sangwan of MDU, Rohtak, Dr. P.K. Champati Rai, IIRS, Professor Hiralal Sharma, Siddhi, Professor Jayati Hazra from Calcutta University, Dr. Ratan Kumar from Patna University, and Dr. D.S. Jalal from Kumaon University. We have lost all of them during this period. The IIG shares its deep sense of grief and stands with each of the family of these departed geographers in this hour of intense sorrow, distress, and irreparable loss. In honor and memory of these departed souls, I request all to observe 2 minutes of silence.
अभी तो शुरू हो
Thank you.
Now I request Professor R.B. Singh to continue with the plenary session, and I'm thankful to allowing me to permit me to interrupt in the session. Over to you, Professor R.B. Singh.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. Dear colleague, first of all, I would like to congratulate IIG and the Department of Geography, Savitribai Phule University, Pune, for organizing a very impressive web conference with topic environment, development and livelihood, sustaining earth and people. Actually, credit goes to Professor Jai Bhai and other colleague, Professor Pardesi and other, for this grand conference. I am also grateful to them for a very important session, first plenary session on this topic. And in the morning session, I am able to hear two very distinguished colleagues, Professor Kaul, President of IIG, and Professor Dikshit Sahab. You know, I was looking the topic given by our three distinguished colleagues, Professor Sahab Fajal, Professor Anup Sakya, and Professor Santanu Kumar Patnaik. And I think that the climate change issue is missing from this. So that is why, with permission of the Professor Jai Bhai, I would like to take just few minutes, maybe 5 to 7 minutes, for introducing this topic in a more comprehensive way. You know, geography is, as you know, developing as a unique transdisciplinary science. You know, this attempts to explore how environments emerge by various natural processes, how society produce, organize, use and misuse environments, and how you know society themselves are influenced by the environment in which they are located. So geography used to bridge a gap between earth sciences and the human sciences. Geography aims to study both natural and human realms, not only the realms, but their interaction, focusing on place, space, regions, addressing and questioning both short-term and longer-term processes and their resultant pattern. Change is the law of nature. And so this our earth, because you know we are dealing with the sustaining earth and people. So this fragile earth is no exception to this, where changing climates and its feedback mechanisms have influenced almost all realms of existence and will continue to affect in future too. And so that is why this is a very dynamic process. President of IIG highlighted a lot about issues relating to glaciers and high altitudinal area, because these areas are undergoing through the transitional phase, not only in terms of natural changes, but also the socio-economic development. or socioeconomic transformation. The extent and frequency of extreme climate related events are not new. It has been happening since the origin of the planet and are on continuous rise throughout. So the continuous and persistence impact of climatic variability on biotic like flora, fauna, and crops is much evident. Therefore, it could not be called a myth. Consequently, even we are getting impending climate change, variability, and their outcomes on livelihood and the food security. Subsequently, it has become one of the chief concerns to monitor and analyze the changing climate and its impact with the help of several calibrations and simulation model and the ground observations. Like you take the Himalaya. Himalaya is a ungauged basin. Even ground stations are declining. We are not getting the continuous data. So that is why we have to use the emerging areas of science like remote sensing and GIS for several calibration and simulation. In its fourth assessment report, IPCC has provided observation regarding increase of surface air temperature, triggering an intensive, slow, and a steady rise in temperature, leading to modification of human lives, and then subsequently the livelihood also, particularly in agrarian economy. So we have to see different type of agroecological zones. Several type of the greenhouse gas emission and potential agricultural losses have induced alarm on livelihood security. This plenary session is an attempt to analyze the impact of changing environment on livelihood security by creating a baseline scenario of temperature and rainfall records through the regional circulation model from both ground station and satellite data to investigate existing and projected livelihood security in India. India is one of the largest countries in terms of population, agricultural production, resource richness, where climate change impact on the agrarian village livelihood is likely to be very alarming. No sector or society is untouched by impact of climate change. Therefore, this IIG conference should attempt to present the inception of climatic variability and livelihood security. It is a quite unique and inclusive conference, integrating environment, development, livelihood security is need of the hour. Few important empirical data I would like to put before I ask our colleague, three distinguished colleagues. We have 20 agroclimatic zones. Our grain production even reached to 284 million metric tons, and highest milk production we have 166.7 million metric tons. Largest livestock population almost 300 million. India has soil type 46 out of 60 in the world. So you can see how we achieved the agro-food revolution in the form of green, white, and blue. So linkages between food system, food environment, and also development need to be emphasized. But same time, 60% net cultivated area are rain-fed, where precipitation is less than potential evapotranspiration. food and nutrition to 1,439 million people by 2025 we need. We have 25% hunger and poor. So agriculture, water, energy, health linkages need to emphasize. Last one important point I would like to highlight, that we are dealing with the earth, India's future earth, and 10 important areas I would like to identify, which maybe can make the India as a global supplier. Food processing, organic farming, iron, aluminum and copper, agrochemicals, electronics, industrial machinery, furniture, leather and shoes, auto parts, textiles, and medicinal supplies. Now, I would like to invite your attention towards Niti Aayog Aspirational District Program. I am inviting all fellow geographers colleagues to focus on these 117 districts identified by Niti Aayog, where we have agricultural production very low infrastructure development, very low health and education facility. I think we must focus on that. You know, geographers should identify top 5 states in horticultural production. Take Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, and Tamil Nadu. Maharashtra, where, earlier, only the banana and oranges were there, but now pomegranate. This Mahabaleshwar area, that one, I'm forgetting this, that it's a very famous, and they are also processing. I visited also that area with Professor Pardesi was also with me. You take the vegetables, Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, and Gujarat, starting from the Delhi to Calcutta, this so fertile area, for different clusters for green farming and all, the spices, and we have many clusters like Makhana in Bihar, the saffron in Jammu and Kashmir, and several, other in the Northeast area also. So, dear colleague, finally, I would like to say that this session must focus on people, prosperity, peace, partnership, and then we can make the planet world more and more sustainable. Now, dear colleague, we have almost 1 hour time left, 1:30. I would like to request my all 3 colleagues to take 15 minutes each for their presentation so that we can have some time for discussion. So without taking more time, it is my great pleasure to invite Professor Sahab Fazal from Aligarh Muslim University. He has been a very active researcher and writing in a very leading journals of the world on different urban issues, urban environment, the urban ecosystems, and got the several fellowship to visit the different university of the world. So, Professor Sahab Fazal.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. To begin with, I would say, am I audible, sir?
Professor Fazal.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So, I would, sorry?
Professor Fazal, please excuse me.
Yeah.
Before you start, I would like to introduce Professor Fazal. And it is my duty to introduce our lecturer, the invitee. Professor Sahab Fazal is Professor of Geography at Aligarh Muslim University. His research interests are in land use, land transformation issues, in urban fringe, remote sensing, and GIS. He has published 14 books and more than 70 research articles in various national and international journals. He is recipient of prestigious fellowships such as Fulbright Fellowship in 2013-14, Commonwealth Fellowship 2004, Shastri Faculty Research Fellowship 2003 and 2009, NWO ICSSR visiting professor in the Netherlands, DST DAD Fellowship 2000-2001, DST Young Scientist Award 2000, CSR Fellowship 1991 to 93. He has successfully completed 4 major research projects sponsored by DST, ICSSR, DST DAD, and SICI Canada. Professor Fazal has also coordinated several refresher courses, winter schools on disaster management for UGC Academic Staff College at AMU. He was also coordinator of DST sponsored winter school on application of RS and GIS for natural resource management. Professor Fazal MHRD sponsored GIAN program. Presently, he is on journals such as Urban Planning, India, Punjab Geographer, National Geography Journal of India, NAGI. He is going to present talk on rural livelihood sustainability. I request Professor Fazal to continue.
Thank you, Professor Pardesi, for such elaborative introduction. I think that is not required because Professor R.B. Singh has already given us a time of 15 minutes, so I'll try to be there well in time. To begin with, I would like to thank IIG for giving me this opportunity to share my views. I intend to speak on rural livelihood sustainability in India, and I have picked some thread from the speeches and addresses by our eminent geographers, K.R. Dixit Saab, R.B. Singh Saab, Kaul Saab, and Ravindra Jaibhai ji. In my talk, to begin with, I would say that I have few key terms, and I will try to highlight these key terms to build my argument. The key terms are livelihood, rural population, and sustainability of the activities. Livelihood, to my mind, is a broad term. It means making of living. If I can say, in general terms, I may say that the grihasti, the meaning of grihasti, that I draw from the livelihood. It is related to economic activity, which are the human activities which are carried out to earn the basic needs. But to my understanding, livelihood is beyond that, more than the economic activity. I would say it is the process of securing basic necessities. Here I would want to bring in the circumstances and situation to perform economic activities. So that is where I would say that there is some kind of deviation between or addition to the definition or understanding to livelihood. And I am saying that it is beyond, more than the economic activities, where I'm trying to bring in the opportunities, the abilities, and the assets, which are very critical for any assessment on livelihood. It becomes even more critical when we examine the rural livelihood because of, if I compare it with the urban livelihood, because of the lesser opportunity, ability, and assets which are related with the rural livelihood. I also want to bring two more points. One is that there is distinct rural-urban divide whenever we talk about the livelihood issue at any level. And second is that we cannot ignore the rural livelihood because we have larger population, larger rural population, both at world level, global level, where almost around 80% of people living in rural areas, and also in India, where still more than 65% people are rural population, and they are drawing livelihood from the rural areas and rural activities. But the livelihood discussion is generally tilted towards urban livelihood because of higher value of earnings and transactions. So this is because rural livelihood is somewhat at the backstage. Rural livelihood, you all would agree with me that it is associated with primary activity, which are characterized by low income generation, natural resource dependence, and greater population dependence. All of them, they make rural livelihood peculiar. If we compare it with the entire society, the livelihood carried out by the entire society. My argument on rural livelihood is that, as Professor R.B. Singh have also touched on this issue, that we are transforming. As in our country also, at different levels, the transformations are taking place. It may be in the economic environment, the social environment, cultural, political, as well as the natural environment. So in this transforming environment, how the rural livelihood is coping with, and how the people of our country, especially in rural areas, they are drawing livelihood out of in this transforming world. Now, bringing the sustainability aspect, I would just like to add that sustainability is not only about the natural or the physical environment, but in the context of rural livelihood, I would say that economic sustainability is of paramount importance, and I would stress on this economic sustainability also. I'm speaking on rural livelihood transforming India. So just bringing in the discussion and elaborating the highlighting the transformation aspect. Very quickly, if I can say, that transformations are taking place in all spheres of rural livelihood. For example, in natural environment, where intensive use, modification of natural conditions, land conversion, land abandonment, land degradation, these are some environmental issues which we need to take into consideration when we talk about the rural livelihood. The social transformations, where in our country, if we can look into it, the transformations which are going on in family structure, land tenure, land ownership, the gender issues, education, social political interactions, or even the migration, they are making transformation in the social structure. In economic transformation, I can bring in the diversification of economic activities, the intensification of economic activities, the commercialization nature of the economic activity. And in rural areas, I would say the monetized economy and also the economic policy, which we can say in present day India, how they are making dent and making the rural livelihood is being impacted a lot. So now coming back to the livelihood, the rural livelihood, it comprises of the activity. As I'm saying, that rural livelihood is all the primary economic activity which is being performed by the rural people. But more important in the context of livelihood, I would say the available opportunity. Now, here I am highlighting this opportunity aspect because we all know that in rural areas there is great challenge of hidden employment. So availability of opportunity is one important aspect which I want to highlight. Individual or collective capabilities, that is also very important. And lastly, the assets which they own or they earn from their activity. In here, I would say the land asset, that makes very important and critical for rural livelihood issues. And also, I would like to bring in the sustainability aspect of rural livelihood. So I mean the ability and capacity of the rural population to cope and recover from stress and shocks. We all are observing in present day circumstances how this pandemic has impacted the livelihood of the entire country, the people of entire country. But more specifically, if we look into the conditions and situation of the rural livelihood people, rural people and livelihood of rural people, they are being affected a lot. So when we talk about the sustainability of rural livelihood, coping and recovering the stress and shocks to maintain, or even if they are performing in a better way the economic activity, and then they may enhance the ability also. So maintaining or enhancing the assets which will help in improving the livelihood. That is the point which I want to make. And one more dimension I would like to bring into my discussion on rural livelihood is that this livelihood cannot be assessed at one level. Although in my present talk, I am highlighting at national level, at state level, but at household level, it is even more important. So it can be at different level, household, local, regional, or even global level. The bottom line of my argument is that all livelihood discussion culminate on human well-being. As Professor R.B. Singh has said that in the context of sustainable development goal, balance of economy, social, natural goals, and bringing harmony to the society. This is the bottom line of all discussion on development, environment, and livelihood. So my point here is that we need to have equity, both at present level as well as at future level, to bring in peace and harmony in life. So with this introduction, I will just try to share my PPT very quickly to, just a moment, I'm trying to share. I hope that it is now visible. With this background, with this introduction, I'll try to portray that what is the status of livelihood in our country. I evaluated rural livelihood sustainability in India, formulated sustainable livelihood index, which were based on first the asset index, as I explained earlier, that here the people and their activities, the access to the resources, both tangible and intangible, are taken into consideration. The evaluation was done on 5 major components. They are physical, social, natural, human, and financial. And the second one is the economic vulnerability index. And here, as I have said, I have focused on stress and shocks and the situation and circumstances which are responsible for downgrading of livelihood or improving the livelihood. And the vulnerabilities are both at external and internal level is taken into consideration. The idea is that obviously higher an economic vulnerability, greater would be the obstacle or hindrance to the livelihood sustainability. And the last is the sensitivity index, which I have taken into consideration. Here we gauge the performance of livelihood, the functioning, the operation of livelihood system. If favorable, it's beneficial. If it is not favorable or it's not desirable, then it will put obstacle to the activity. So sensitivity, to my mind, is positively influencing the livelihood sustainability. So I'll skip this. I have already explained this. So this is the sustainable livelihood framework on which I have done this study for the different states of our country. As you can see that there are 5 livelihood assets. Then there is economic vulnerability and also the other. In this slide, I can show you the various indicators. There are 5 major components and about 30 minor components. I'm skipping all that because I have a paucity of time. So I'll just try to give you some picture of at the state level as to how they are performing, the rural livelihood is performing. So here you can see that I have tried to find out the human assets in rural India, and you can see that the lighter picture, lighter shades, the sustainability is poorer, it's lower, and darker shades have high sustainability. And in this image, the human assets are better off. The physical assets, again, the darker shade, for example, the states of Punjab, Haryana, and Himachal, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala, they have higher physical assets in comparison to other states. Now here, the social assets also have this picture. The point which I want to make is that the central Indian states, especially UP, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, Rajasthan, these are the states which across all the assets, they are showing lower response to the assets. And that is that would be visible in the vulnerability and sustainability aspect of the livelihood of rural people in these states. So assets also, these states are at poor level. In terms of natural assets, these states which I have mentioned, they are better off, but overall other assets, these states are not at a comfortable level. My point is that since larger rural people, they are living in central India, and if the situation and status of assets are not very good over here, then it would be reflected into the sustainability and vulnerability that I would be portraying very soon. So this is the situation of natural assets, and this is the situation of financial assets. All in all, I would say that smaller states, the states with rich natural assets, they are performing well in the context of rural livelihood. If I can show you the composite score of all 5 assets in the Pentagon, the financial assets and natural assets are important. Now, I come to the economic vulnerability of rural India. You can see that eastern states, the tribal states, and the states with higher concentration of population, they have higher economic vulnerability among these states. The livelihood sensitivity is very in a better situation again in those states where the natural assets or the livelihood activity, especially agricultural activity, is performing in a better way. Here, Himachal and Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand is also in this group of states because they have good horticulture and other activities are going on with lesser concentration of population. So they are lying in this continuation. So with this background, very quickly, if I can give you an idea that I have divided the whole of the country, the states of whole of the country into 4 categories, where some states where the livelihood and sustainability is poor, they are at bottom level in the surviving stage of livelihood ladder, whereas some states which have good livelihood options, good earning, and the sustainability is also being maintained, there I would say that they are in accumulated state. So there are 4 categories: accumulating, adapting, coping, and surviving. The best and higher ladder, I would say, would be the accumulating state, and the poorest among them would be the surviving state. So these are the states which are performing in terms of better livelihood activities, and they are also sustainable livelihood is being practiced in these states. So you can see that Kerala comes there, Goa comes there, and the agriculturally rich states, Punjab, Haryana, and also, as I have mentioned, Himachal and Uttarakhand are coming. They have enough asset base. All kinds of assets are better off there, and they can cope the stress and shocks. And that is visible even in this pandemic period also, that the agricultural sector, the primary sector, have performed well in these states. The point here which I want to make here is that in these states, livelihood are sustainable and viable in these states. The second set of states is the adapting states, where most of the southern states, they come in this category, where the assets and sensitivity scores are better off. They have lower vulnerability, but there is some kind of transformations which are going on in the agricultural sector, which is impacting the sustainability issue. And on that count only, it can be differentiated with the with the previous sustainability ladder which I have mentioned. The third is the coping states. They are at the lower ladder. In this group of states, there the activity is somewhat restricted by different situations. For example, Rajasthan and Gujarat, they are not physically endowed with, the nature has not endowed them with better agricultural activity. So they are dependent on the related primary economic activity in the rural areas. And because of that, they are at the lower ladder of sustainability. They are more prone to the stress because of the physical conditions they are facing. And this is because of that, you would find that from these states, large scale migration in the cases of whenever there is some situation occurs because of poor physical condition, a large scale migration take place. So because of that, they are at the lower status of lower ladder of sustainability. And lastly, these are the states which I mentioned in earlier also, that these are the core states, heartland of our country, which have large population. But the rural people, they are suffering there. The assets are lesser. Now you would say that these are also the states which are endowed with all kinds of physical assets, natural assets. But since the population is so large that the competition among the people, they make the share of each individual who is practicing who is trying to draw livelihood out of these assets are lower. And on that count, I am saying that the assets are lower in this area. Physical assets, naturally, they are existing, but because of large population, they are facing this problem. They have scored lower sensitivity score also. Economically also, they are vulnerable, and both their livelihood and sustainability on sustainability count, they are unviable. So all in all, I would say that this is the picture of our country at state level. In my analysis, I have found that majority of states or majority of people, they are surviving at the rural level in drawing livelihood. Just to conclude, I would say that although I did the study at state level for the country level picture, but for livelihood assessment, it has to be done at micro level. And I'm doing this, but in this presentation, I am not sharing with you. But my point here is that what I have portrayed here and said that some of the states, they are at adapting state, but at micro level, we may find some areas and many people who are not even among those states at higher level of sustainable ladder. This is something which we need to work on it at national level, so that each individual or each household should have better sustainability in terms of drawing livelihood from rural activities. Now, this is where, again, last point which I again want to emphasize on is that there is surely great divide, rural-urban divide. And because of that, despite of the fact that we have large rural population, large number of people who are dependent on rural livelihood, in some way or the other, we are not focusing the challenges and issues of these rural people who are at a very lower ladder of sustainability of livelihood, and they are very vulnerable to all kinds of stress and shocks, and that is visible in this pandemic period also. Now, it is very interesting that agricultural sector has performed well in this pandemic period also. But if you go to the rural areas, if you look into the rural livelihood, you would find, we all have found that at individual household level, the situation is very pathetic. And surely we cannot ignore the rural livelihood, despite of the fact that we we are improving a lot in terms of all the assets at national level, but at rural level, the people and livelihood is greatly affected by all the transformations which are taking place globally. So my point here is that we need to focus a lot on rural livelihood, because we have a very large number of people in rural areas. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Professor Sahab Fazal, for giving us different type of asset index: physical, natural, financial, human, social, and economic, and also presenting through Pentagon. So you are putting before us livelihood vulnerability, livelihood sensitivity, and livelihood sustainability. And you have rightly pointed out that micro level study is very important. And if you can elaborate this at a district level, that will be a great contribution by a geographer to our country. Thank you, Professor Sahab Fazal, and we'll take the discussion at the end. But I would like to invite Professor Pardesi to introduce our next colleague, Professor Anup Sakya from Guwahati University.
Yes, sir. We invite Professor Anup Saikia. Before he starts, I would like to introduce Professor Anup Saikia. He is the professor at the Department of Geography, Guwahati University. His areas of interest are GIS, protected areas, and landscape metrics. He has published papers relating to Northeast India in journals such as Scottish Journal, Geographical Journal, Danish Journal of Geography, Singapore Journal of Tropical Geography, International Journal of Remote Sensing and Physical Geography, among others. So there is a long list, but I would like to cut it short, and I welcome Professor Saikia to deliver his lecture.
Thank you very much, Professor Pardesi, and thank you, Professor R.B. Singh, Professor M.N. Kaul, and Professor K.R. Dixit, who I had the privilege of seeing and listening to this morning. I must confess that compared to the biodata of my earlier speaker, Professor Shahab Fazal, and of course, Professor R.B. Singh, my biodata is very brief. It becomes a two-line biodata, but I am from a state where we make headlines for the wrong reasons. In fact, I will speak on biodiversity today because this is one of the few areas in which Northeast India is fairly well endowed. But here again, I must confess that we get into the news, national and international, for the wrong reasons. In fact, less than a month ago, we made global headlines because 18 Asian elephants were killed by a bolt of lightning in Assam, and there was immediately a lot of hue and cry because of one reason, basically, that being Assam has got a history of human-wildlife conflict, and as far back as in 2001, 21 Asian elephants were poisoned by villagers in Sonitpur district. So immediately there was a lot of hue and cry, and there was the fear that this time as well, it was villagers who had poisoned the elephants. Now, the scenario is like this. We are in a biodiversity hotspot, but our resources as with other biodiversity hotspots of India like Western Ghats and the Himalaya biodiversity hotspot, is that these resources, these natural resources, are fast shrinking. And as human numbers increase and human requirements increase, my predecessors in the morning, they mentioned about sustainability issues and so on, livelihood issues and all this. And Professor Shahab Fazal also mentioned about human well-being. So I agree that we must keep human well-being at the forefront of any research study. But my question is, at what cost? Does human well-being have to come at the cost of all other species? So this is a problem. This is an ethical problem, because we have not got this earth only for human beings. Is it not that we need other species? We need to let them survive, and so many of them are endangered and getting more and more endangered as time progresses. I mean, we are 1.3 billion Indians. The global population is rising. Carbon production is rising. But countries like India and China, we just cannot stop producing coal. I mean, this is a dirty fossil fuel, but because of economic considerations, we continue to use coal as a fossil fuel. So we are polluting the earth, and we are the age of the Anthropocene is on us. And unfortunately, our track record has not been very good. What we have done for different endangered wildlife is that we have made their habitat become smaller and smaller. Now, what happens with fragmented habitats is that there is no transfer of genes and flow of diversity when an ecosystem becomes too small and too fragmented. So whether we have a large species like the Asian elephant, or smaller species, or even plants, they simply cannot sometimes migrate or move to a neighboring fragment. So when let us say an elephant has to move out of a small area because of lack of fodder, lack of food in that forest, that elephant must traverse through anthropogenic landscapes. And we have made roads, railway lines, power lines, we have transformed the earth. And when that animal passes through our terrain, the anthropogenic terrain, there is human-wildlife conflict. So it's a very difficult situation, because I mean, human beings have to be a little selfish. We have to worry about ourselves, but it should not be at the cost of all other species. So this is why I put the title of my small talk today as, the trials and tribulations. Yes, geographers are dealing with biodiversity, but there are trials and tribulations involved. Tribulations in the sense that human numbers are growing, human requirements are growing. There are issues of sustainability. There are issues of marginalized livelihoods, because farmers, particularly in hill areas, their productivity is declining, and climate change is likely to impact marginal farmers, particularly those in hill areas. And in Northeast India, we have another factor which comes into play, as Professor Dixit mentioned in the morning. He spoke about shifting cultivation. So with all this, who can blame the villager if and when he decides to poison the elephant, who in one night, a herd of elephant can come and completely destroy the entire crop field. And along with that crop field, the very livelihood of that village or the villager or that community. So when human livelihoods are at stake, this becomes a very delicate issue that, can the state compensate that farmer enough? And sometimes there is loss of lives, human lives as well. Sometimes the effect is on the wildlife. So it's a very fine balance, but because of growing human numbers, things are getting very difficult. And India is uniquely positioned in the sense that we have 4 biodiversity hotspots in our country. I don't know how many hotspots are there for other countries, but certainly I would think that not many countries would have more numbers of biodiversity hotspots than India possesses. Of course, I agree that the Sundaland biodiversity hotspot, which touches upon Nicobar Islands, is only a very small part which India has. But the other 3, we have good proportions of area within the Western Ghats, including Sri Lanka, the Himalaya biodiversity hotspot, and of course the Indo-Burma biodiversity hotspot. So with this introduction, and of course Professor R.B. Singh sir already mentioned in the morning that climate change has not been discussed. So I just have peripherally a slide on climate change and biodiversity. I must point out that, yes, a lot of work is being done by geographers using traditional methods, field surveys, but also remote sensing and GIS data sets, which is sometimes fairly efficient in covering large areas. But of course, there is no substitute for field work. So with this background, I will just go to a PowerPoint, and if I'm extending the time too much, please restrict me or let me know, because like most teachers, once I get the microphone, I keep on talking. So I just go to
try to conclude within 5-7 minutes.
5-7 minutes, right, sir? So I will skip a lot of slides. So geographers and biodiversity, and this is just how biodiversity, why is it useful for us? We need genetic and species diversity. It is worth a lot, and there is immense unexplored value, particularly medicinal plants, and no time is more relevant than today when we are talking about the coronavirus pandemic, which has changed the whole world. But there is also, in addition to the aesthetics value, there is also a question of ethics, because the earth does not belong to us alone. And here I just refer you to a paper where some of you might consult, which talks about, issues in human geography where other than human lives have been less addressed by geographers. So this is the list of biodiversity hotspots. I will not delay here, but I just draw your attention to the lower corner of the screen. And we must all agree that degradation of our biodiversity hotspots and habitat fragmentation is taking place at a very frightening pace. And these are the 4 biodiversity hotspots. As you can see, only a small part of the Nicobar Islands falls under the Sundaland Biodiversity Hotspot. And my question is the Anthropocene inimical to wildlife? You know, we develop roads, railways, electric lines, and this just demolishes elephant habitat and various other wildlife habitat. I mean, I am focusing slightly on elephants because, you know, that is one of the one of the species which we have in fair abundance in Northeast India. We are estimated to have around 11,000 elephants, wild Asian elephants, and but we also have a fair amount of tigers, as in other parts of India. This photograph is not from this part of India. I got it from the internet, but current and future climates, you know, habitat suitability of tigers based on temperature and precipitation likely to change radically, and things are going to be slightly worse in the future for some of our wildlife. And not only the wildlife, but also the fodder species, the food requirements of these species. So this is, of course, a very old study. So, and the title I put very particularly is that the more people and the less land syndrome, because, you know, we are outstripping the limited land resources. And this is a statistic from the Ministry of Environment and Forest that because of human-elephant conflict, as many as 2,300 people were killed over a short span of 4 to 5 years. And my question is that, is habitat fragmentation the culprit? Are we behind this? Are we ourselves responsible for this? And this is a small inset about a protected area in, of course, this is in Bhutan, where you have human pressure inside a wildlife national park. This is the Jigme Dorje National Park in a country like Bhutan. So for India, it is much, much worse because our population pressure is so severe. And this was the infamous case where in 2001, 21 elephants were killed in the Sonitpur district. As you can see here, this is bordering, you know, just between Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. And the report was carried out by Wildlife Trust of India. And I will just translate what is written on the elephant, is that they have written in white paint. It means that the elephant is called laden and it is stealing their grain. Therefore, it is a grain thief, laden. That is the exact translation of what is written in Assamese there. So work is being done. I mean, work has been done on railway ecology and road ecology. Railway ecology, of course, very recently. Road ecology is an older study, but much more work is needed. And not only in Assam, but also in the neighboring area of northern Bengal, where I refer to you to this study, which you can consult. Elephants being mowed down on the tracks. And this is, I've given you the reference, and this also happens. But my opinion on this was that it was the degraded habitat to blame. Had we had a more healthy habitat, you know, larger trees and so on, that would not have happened, perhaps. And this is what is needed to be done. to make overpasses, underpasses, and viaducts. So while this has been done in other parts of the world, India is just about to make its first overpass, and this will be connecting two habitats within the Western Ghats, Mumbai and Vasai Vihar. So this, I don't think it is operational yet, but it is good to see that we are taking up this. And Professor R.B. Singh mentioned about climate change. Now, this is going to get worse, and Australia's wildfire of 2019-20, where over 3 billion animals were killed and displaced. These kind of incidences are going to get worse in the coming years. So this is just a screenshot of the work which is being done in Western Ghats. And I think since I have a time crunch, I will not deal with all this, but just what is highlighted in yellow, that geographers need to look at issues like beyond diversity losses, but also we need to look at invasive species, the proliferation of invasive species using maybe UAVs, which is being done in other parts of the world. I am told that in Bangalore also, in the Bannerghatta National Park, this is being considered, but this is very important because invasive species will reduce the already limited fodder for wildlife, because that is the nature of invasive species. They tend to destroy local species, which for which the local wildlife will suffer, and they are forced out of their limited habitat. So also livelihoods will be at risk, and the hill areas of the Himalaya and Indo-Burma will be particularly at risk. So, and of course, we need interdisciplinary efforts. So a lot of other issues, but is this too much of us, which is creating a problem? Too many human beings, are we creating a problem? You can see, this is the last slide, that along the Western Ghats and the Indo-Burma hotspot, we are densely populated. That is where the problem lies. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Professor Sakya, for bringing before us a very important issue of biodiversity conservation, together with food, fodder, fuel, energy security. Biodiversity is a very important component of sustainability, and you have pointed out species diversity, genetic diversity, and ecosystem diversity. I am reminded, looking, that how elephant killed by the lightning, in Kaziranga National Park, every year we used to lose so many endemic nature of a species like rhino, elephant, deer. But at the same time, I would like, you have rightly pointed out, and we have 3 levels of biodiversity in our country, around 15 biosphere reserves, more than 60 national parks, and almost 600 wildlife sanctuaries. So these are the restored polygon in our country, and India is considered as one of the very rich biodiversity, considering the hot spots. Now we have our third valuable colleagues in this plenary session, and I would like to invite Professor Pardesi to introduce Professor Santanu Kumar Patnaik from Rajiv Gandhi University, Arunachal Pradesh.
Sir, I welcome Professor Santanu Patnaik. Before he starts, I would like to introduce Professor Santanu Kumar Patnaik. Professor Patnaik has studied in different states of India. He did his bachelor's from Odisha, master's from Kurukshetra, and MPhil and PhD from JNU Delhi. And he had undergone training on digital image processing in the field of remote sensing way back in 1990 at RRSC Nagpur. Thereafter, he took training in IIRS Dehradun and applied the technology like remote sensing and GIS in soil resource studies and land use planning in 2013. He joined Rajiv Gandhi University in 1993 and is continuing till today. He had 1 year experience as professor of geoinformatics in 2008-9 in School of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences, Adikavi Nanaya University in Rajamundry, Andhra Pradesh. He is a member of several geographical societies and associations of India and abroad. He has contributed papers in different national and international academic and professional technical sessions within India and abroad. Besides this, he has published on variety of topics ranging from geomorphology, surface hydrology, agriculture, urban management, and spatial planning. He has worked on minor and major research projects and consultancy projects which are essentially practical, problem solving, and geospatial technology oriented. He has published his papers in many national and international academic and technical journals. I welcome you, sir, and I request you to deliver your talk. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon. I hope it is audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible.
Yeah. Thank you for the invitation to the team of IIG, Professor K.R. Dixit, Professor R.B. Singh, Professor M.N. Kaul, Professor Jayabhai, Professor Sudhakar, he's with me now. Then we have our co-panelists, Saab Faisal and Anup Saikia. They are close to my heart. And it's a pleasant surprise to be here and participating as an academic and dealing with the special science, integrating with the livelihood, especially the rural livelihoods. I think I request the organizer to allow me to share the screen in the meantime. And when we are talking of rural development, essentially we are targeting the countryside, which has poor access to many things. When you are talking of the rural populace, or restrict to the modern facilities defined in this present context, better healthcare, better housing, better livelihood, and better education. And for that, everybody needs money. Now, that is the biomedia to access something, that's money is a must. So that is linked with the income generating capacity of the people. In the rural areas, when the activities are centered around the primary activities and to little bit of secondary activities, the income is going to be at the bottom 25 to 30% level. So there, this current thrust on like having doubling the farmer's income or and empowering the people to have better access to the financial institutions, financial instruments. There, the thrust is there now so that the people have better livelihood, especially in the rural areas. Now, so far, we have been working on with the strategies like a homogenized approach, economic thrust. There, the whole area or the region is considered to be uniform and one policy prescription is there. So that becomes the standard of the whole area. We have been, we have learned many economic development theories. Whatever is mentioned here means a lot. Besides that, we have now the connotations like sustainable development. That means not to allow the concept of diminishing returns to percolate in, so that not only our generation, the future generation basically enjoy the facilities, enjoy that lifestyle. Then in this, as you said, the predetermined development strategies, what we basically is that the economic structure, the technological development and access to it, the demographic, the composition of the person, basically the workforce component, then the lifestyle, because regional variations are there, then politics and the societal values associated with the lifestyle, so that cannot be changed until unless there is serious effort in that. Then essentially the environment and ecological parameters which are being now has been held prime, so that there is no adverse impact on the environment and ecology. Then as you said, the approaches, we had the regional approach, we have taken the administrative unit, state, district, blocks, circles like that, that percolates down in a hierarchical manner for the administrative regions. Then the sectoral, looking into the activities, primary, secondary, tertiary. In that again, the compartmentalizing. If we look into the NSSO occupational structure, then we can have different sectors of economy which are being taken care of for the planning purposes. So once we had this assessment of this development by putting in parameter and categorizing them, find the J score and put in the development indices for the different districts of Andhra Pradesh. Then when we visited actually the interior areas, the effect of development is not visible. So we started to the drag effects, basically the topography, the climate, accessibility issues. Then on that basis, we integrated and we got this development. That's it. What we observe is actually, so there from then onwards, this is long back way in 2000 to 2003. So long back, the time we experimented and published something like that. Then in that way, what we observe is that we find the strategies, if you say the structured strategies, where we follow either a region or a sector economic account. Then production, this becomes the considered the production clusters. And in that, what we expect, the volume of the output should be more, so that it is commercially viable and can be sent outside, exporting facility. That means it has to be in the commercial scale. Then for that, states like Arunachal, where the population density is very less and workforce is also less, accessibility is very poor, then what we need basically to produce that sort of large or viable.
I think there is some
Any
technical issue.
feedback? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Now you are audible.
Am I audible
Yes,
now?
yes, sir.
Oh, okay, because so in that way, actually, and then for last 2-3 days there is problem with the internet, so I think it got stuck anyway. Anyway, so in that way, the rural areas actually had problem or is still having problem. And in the state development report, I tried to consolidate few of the land parameters, climate parameters, land, climate, temperature, rainfall, to find out what is the land potentials and what are the feasible areas where certain type of agriculture can be prescribed instead of making a global specific prescriptions. So in that way, we tried for the where are the areas suitable for paddies, vegetables, pulses, millets, the staple foods, cereals, then the oil seeds, vegetables like that. Then we concentrated on also horticulture, orange, banana, apple, pineapple, and also tried for the kiwi. That way we try to identify the areas. But what happened, as there is a difficulty in translating this sort of resource output into execution, few things could be looked into by the state government and few things were left out. So this is what was the result, which was for the rice, wheat, millet, apple, and ginger for different districts of Arunachal Pradesh. So what happened is that when it comes to the administration, it takes at the district level and this prescribes only one thing or few things for that. That became an issue because here the workforce is limited and the people's choice is also different. The constraints like land, suitable land for agriculture is also an issue. So in that way, now we are thinking of randomizing this development strategies instead of making a blanket prescription for any area. Randomized means we will find out looking into the capabilities, integrating many factors. This is a complex modeling where a lot of DSS is SDSS is required. In that way, we try to find out the strength and weakness of each area in terms of topography, in terms of climate, and then what would be the productivity and yield on the different physiographic conditions and different climatic conditions. Those were also considered. Then the combination of there are certain intrinsic and extrinsic factors. Intrinsic factors means, as you said, like this. We'll come to this next one. The fixed or the intrinsic, we have this like topography, rainfall, climate, soil. We cannot change this. These are fixed things. What are the flexible things is the capital investment, manpower, skilled or unskilled, then the demand, whether it is subsistence or the commercial, then the cost benefit ratio. Until unless there is substantial benefit, if the cost is more, then nobody will go for it. So in that way, we try to integrate these for to find out where are the possible bubbles of development prospects. So we are taking this in Arunachal Pradesh, ecology, the endowment of resources, population distribution, then economy of the Arunachal Pradesh. If you look into this, all these are being strongly influenced by the mountain system, because ecology is such that it's a biological hotspot. We cannot intervene anywhere, everywhere without permission. Resources are less, except the forest resources. Mineral resources are also less. Land also as a resource, it's scarce because of the topography. Then population distribution is also a terrible problem here, because somewhere in the say the Dibang Valley, the population density is 1. So one can imagine. So there are a few villages where 100 or 150 or 200 persons are living in there. So in that way, we see the rural population, which is something around 10.6 lakhs in Arunachal, and urban population of 3.2 lakhs. So in that way, majority live in rural areas. They actually should be supported for their livelihood options and augmenting their income so that they live a better life. So till 2007, it was basically the primary activities which were dominant. Now the same primary activities plus some sort of commerce is coming up, which is basically the traders community, nothing else in terms of production. So in that way, we try to get into the rural development scenarios and augmenting their livelihood options. So here we think that because the rural areas, they lack money, because whatever they earn, it's simply being consumed by them, and they hardly get anything in terms of cash. And whatever cash is basically through the various schemes which is coming from the government, and few people who are in some sort of job. So otherwise, inflow of money is very little. So in that case, financial inclusion as well as the availability of credit system to the people is required. So we took that, financial services like those for the savings, loans, insurance, credit, payment, etc., which are basically needed for any area to prosper and recycle money as well as utilize the money for the benefit. So what is the banking?
Please conclude. Please conclude.
Yes, sir. 2 minutes more for this, then I'll just live through the work, then we'll complete. So this is what is the banking services which is be provided. What is that? This, if you see the diagram, then it is the purple color circles are basically 20-kilometer radius. On ground, it will be 40 kilometers by road. So this is what is the access area we think. Then, if you see the graph, this lowest and is of for the self-help groups. Then, if you see the non-performing assets are, that means they are able to regenerate money for the repaying the loan. Why? Because they are not able to earn because of the faulty strategy. How much they are doing, they are only. So in that way, one of the rural participation of the local people in the rural development through the self-help groups are limited, and they really affect the find out for them. That way, that we try to model with various parameters. And then what are those? Major towns, because they are the consumers. They are creating the demand for which the those. If you see the working population, they are the one who are going to generate the wealth. They are going to work on it. So if you see the distribution, then the population, working population is very less in many parts of the circle. This is at the circle level. Then if you see the circle headquarters, again, how it is included is the point source for the information dissemination as well as the program implementation. So if you see, there are many circles, and the circles are large in terms of geographic area, but the information or the program implementation is very poor. Then access, logistics, even if they are the area is planned from such some sort of agricultural produce, but how they will be redistributed over area. So that is one another. Then altitude is a regulating factor because of the inaccessibility, the slope and other things are calculated from there, constraints for the economic activities and the logistics. Then, annual rainfall, major input as well as it forms as a disadvantage. Good for the agriculture, but it's also responsible for flooding, flash floods, and high surface runoff. So we take the NDWI wetness index in the pre-monsoon area. That's the bare minimum wetness. That's also sufficiently good enough for the for their land capability supporting the agriculture. Then you have the drainage, surface runoff, water availability, because that's crucial because of the high slope terrain. The water flows down immediately. Soil water retention sometimes becomes poor. So what we at the end try to project is that, so if we look for development projects through the NABARD, through the banking, credit facilities and the self-help groups initiatives to go for certain livelihood options, and the state governments, plantation, horticulture, medicinal aromatic plants, forestry, wasteland, in the forestry in the wasteland, then the tissue culture and ornamental plants, fruit plants. Then you have the biopesticide unit, prospects for that, animal husbandry, minor irrigation system, so that some exotic species can be cultivated, or off-season vegetables can be cultivated, fisheries and agricultural engineering. So in that way, we try to find out the possibilities in the form of bubbles. So if you see, the yellow part are having low probability, large amount of area of Arunachal Pradesh goes like this. Then if you see the clusters or the bubbles, they are concentrated, sometimes linear from where there is road, because that is logistics support, or else everything will fail. So in that way, we are trying to model it as a bubbles for where the initiatives, rural livelihood initiatives can be offered to the people. And what we are planning is that it should not be single crop or same area, same crop. We have to find out in each area for diversification of crops. So interdependency is there, consumption of produce is there among different villages, then different rural centers, different circle headquarters, and obviously to the district headquarters and the exporting. Nowadays, I mean, the Rupa and other things, there are cultivation going on for the tomato, so which is exported directly to the sent to the directly to the Assam. So in that way, we can think of randomized strategies for the holistic or sustainable rural livelihood generation as well as the economic area. Thank you. I will conclude. And those who are interested with this decision support system and this sort of planning can contact, and it can be collaborative work also. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Patnaik, for giving us a very important case study from Arunachal Pradesh. And you brought before us the total landscape synthesis, incorporating landscape structure, taking topography, rainfall, climate, soil, to also rainfall, to landscape potential, starting with the composite development index as a traditional method to geospatial development index as a modern method. And you have done also the SWOT analysis, particularly in productivity and yield. But I like very much your soil master study, because this is very important for our country, where precipitation is less than potential evapotranspiration in more than 60% of the total geographical area. And you have rightly pointed out the prospects of medicinal plant and the off-season vegetation, particularly in hilly area, for creating the livelihood. Thank you very much. Now it is almost the 1:50. If organizer will allow 10 minutes, then we can have the few comments from the floor. Is it possible to extend, or we can close?
Yes, sir. We have to be very quick. We can go for discussion, but
okay. So
I request all the resource persons to be.
Now I would like to invite the few 3-4 comments and from the floor. So identify yourself and then you tell. Is there any comment or question from any colleagues?
Yeah, I think, sir, I can say, I'm Ravindra Jayabhai, sir.
Yes, sir, Professor Jayabhai.
Yeah. So, all the 3 presentations, whatever in the morning we discuss, and what the Professor Dikshit and your presentation, you have emphasized there are the need of the studies from our local site-specific studies, where we will have our own strategies of development by looking to the diversity of the regions. So the issues they have taken, mainly the livelihood and then biodiversity, like Professor Saikia is also focused on that. I think it's interesting, and it will help us. So those who are the students, mainly there, and even the teachers, those who are attending, for them, such studies will help to develop their site-specific strategies to deal with whatever the theme we have proposed about the environment, development, and livelihood. So this is just my observation about these presentations.
Okay.
So the
Thank you.
presentations.
Thank you. Any other comments? Otherwise, I will conclude.
Saptarshi, sir.
Professor Saptarshi.
Sir, mic unmute karo.
I like the idea that Fazal has put forth regarding vulnerability and how the rural development can be regained if we take care of such indices. It is really interesting to see the results at micro level, and also the in the last lecture, Patnaik has suggested that there cannot be the uniform recipe for all the regions. I agree, and any geographer will definitely agree with this view, because we know that in all different areas, diversified in our diversified countries, there are number of issues related to local population, related to local resources. I would like to add one more point, that we should, Fazal has said about rural urban divide. But I would like to add that we geographers should identify the problems created due to urban encroachment in rural economy, because the cost benefit analysis was also given by some people, but I would like to stress that the cash flow analysis, any say green development. So in green revolution is meant for rural development, or it is meant to give market for big companies like Godrej Pashu or the what do you say, that the chemical fertilizers, pesticides, etc. So that geographers should analyze such issues, and even for finance, the really finance helps to is it a positive intervention or negative intervention? That also we have to see. This is my own opinion. Fazal may comment upon. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sapkowski, sir. So, dear colleagues, we had a very excellent session, looking the three very important key elements: environment, development, and livelihood. These are interlinked, and we have to, I would like to elaborate this environment, development, and livelihood. Particularly, we have to focus on food, water, climate, energy, biodiversity, and human health. In this context, geographers should try to evolve what I would like to knowledge production based on science policy interface, particularly for country like India, promoting sustainable agricultural development. We have different geographical technology, and we can use for sustainable rural development, for weather forecasting, for precision agriculture, for watershed management. These all are very, very important in this context. And finally, it is very important that the community relevant analysis, and we can innovate the technology which can be very, very usable by the people. I can give you the one example. We have around 700 districts in our country. If surrounding to 700 districts, if we can have the 3 and 4 outlet based on primary production, because we have primary production all over the country. We have agriculture, we have animal husbandry, we have fisheries, fishing, we have the mining, forestry. If surrounding to 700 district headquarters, if we can have 3 and 4 outlets where not only we have the primary production, but also the processing and marketing, then I can tell you, people from the district headquarters, they will go every day in the evening, weekend, they will go to the such outlet with family. They will take lunch and dinner. There will be lot of backward and forward linkages. Local tourism will be, promoted, and local employment will be generated. Now, people are more concerned about the employment because during the pandemic, we lost a lot of employment. And where we can get the employment, we can get in the agriculture sector. So I used to call it the 6 industry, where 6 industry means primary 1, secondary 2, and tertiary 3. So 3 to 5 and 6. If we can combine primary, secondary, and tertiary, we can create lot of employment and income generating activity, and we can make India's future earth and the people more and more, we can move in the area of direction which may be considered as a sustainable development. And the peace is a very, very important for supporting this all aspects. Now, finally, I would like to, express my sincere thanks to Professor Jai Bhai for giving me opportunity to such important and also meeting through the, a web conference. Lot of our distinguished colleagues, particularly Professor Dixit, Professor Kaul, Professor Tiwari, Professor Kismohan, Professor Surikant, so many, Professor Kaur, and all my three panelists, very, very important, valuable. They brought before us Professor Sahab Khajal and Professor Patnaik, Professor Sakya. They all brought before us a very important case study, and our young researchers should take, lesson from that, such type of the best practices. I would like to say these all are three are the best practices in the field of geography. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Pardesi, for helping for conducting this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Singh. Before we stop, I would like to thank our speakers of plenary session 1, Professor Shah Fazal, Professor Anup Saikia, Professor Santanu Patnaik, for sparing time with us and sharing their views and their experiences in the field of geography. I would like to thank Professor R.B. Singh for chairing this particular session. On behalf of the organizing committee, we are thankful to all of you. And before we close the session, there is one announcement that at 2:30 p.m., technical session will start, and all of you are requested to join through the link which is communicated to you through the mails and messages. Thank you very much.